Hello, one and all, and welcome to yet another very, very spooky complete history. I am your host as usual, Lick Mojave. I am joined by friends of the show and friends of the me, Austin Piss Vortex and Spitzy.
Hello.
Spitzy. That's
Hi.
your guys' names, right? Yeah?
Uh-huh.
Did I do good? Did I?
You did so good. I'm patting your little head.
Thank you so much. Also, new to the channel, introducing special guest, Lilith Botster Walter, developer of Bloodborne PSX and the upcoming Bloodborne cart. Lilith, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to go live with the complete history of Bloodborne.
Yes. Oh my God, we were pardon the kind of I'm so sorry guys, but literally before we got started, we ended up finding a real life Tumblr blog called tumblr.cumbler.com, and it's really disoriented this entire situation.
Can we get a yag in chat? Can we get
some
yags?
yags in chat?
Speaking before
I know
we
some
do
people
that-
who will so yag for you.
Hell yes.
Hell what?
Hell.
Oh my God, there's people following the blog. Oh my God, that's crazy. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
All those yags!
Aw, guys.
Yag!
Y'all are so much. All right.
Aw.
Oh my gosh, I got a shout out.
Yeah, you sure did. Yeah,
Yeah,
yours.
duh.
Oh,
Yeah, you-
golly.
Yeah, Lilith's been on Twitch putting up like the dev threads for Bloodborne cart and stuff. I've been loving watching. I think it's worth establishing a couple of things. Usually, I do this this kind of stream with a panel of people who are new to the property. I don't have experts necessarily, but everyone here has played Bloodborne, so we're gonna go around real quickly and establish where's a little bit our own histories with this game. Starting with you, Spitzy, the most recent. What's your Bloodborne journey been like, Spitzy?
Hi, I'm Spitzy, and I played 3 hours of Bloodborne in 2020 and then never again. And then I picked it up like a week and a half ago, maybe 2. Last night, I tried German for the first time.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you're
I have not yet once cleared this game, but I'm very, very close.
You
And
are-
I sat through this one finishing her run with her obsession with it.
yes. We're gonna get into that in a second. How about you, Austin?
Yeah, so when back when Elden Ring was coming out, that was like 2 years ago almost now, right? Something like that.
Almost about 2.5 years now.
Oh my god, that's scary. Anyways, when it was coming out, I was like really determined, like, I never played Bloodborne, but I have an old PS4 that I never use. I'm gonna beat this game before Elden Ring comes out, and I started like a week before Elden Ring came out because I figured that'd be enough time, and I got like so mad.
God
I was
damn.
so mad.
Where did you get stuck? Because there's got to be some point where you just that progress grinds to a halt.
Yeah, where'd the angles come?
I think the angriest I was I was on the Mikolash fight, and I
Yep.
kept getting
Yep.
like hit by
That's
the
it.
Call Beyond,
There it is.
and like Elden Ring was out, and I was like, please.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. It's fucking mean. How about you, Lilith? Have you played this game?
No. Never. I've never played this game. I have no idea
Oh,
what we're
great!
talking
So
about here.
you're a new face. You're gonna learn a lot.
I'm gonna learn so much. Okay, real talk though. Like, I can tell you, I've played the first couple of hours of Bloodborne like 10,000 times. Playing it to completion,
For sure.
like I've only done it a couple of times.
Yeah,
I played it when it
that's all
first came out, and then I played it a couple times since. But like for research for Bloodborne PSX, because it's only the first couple
Right.
chapters. I wish I could bring up my like hours logged. It's insane.
Oh my God! No, that's gotta be.
Just the first few chapters, yeah, staring at crates and rocks and all the assets, all of them.
And you would have had to like patch like little areas in. You would have had to find out like where to do that like elegantly too. That's like a lot of attention to
Yeah.
detail.
God.
Fucking hell. As for As for me, so for a very long time, Bloodborne was like one of my favorite games that I never actually played. I played. It's kind of synonymous with my whole history with FromSoft. I went over to a friend's place. Was like, hey, that Bloodborne game. That's like, it seems kind of neat. Can I like try that out for a little bit? And was like immediately super into it after like playing Dark Souls 1 many years before that and bouncing off it pretty much immediately. But we played it there for like a weekend. She was like, hey, you might actually like be pretty good at this if you like apply yourself. And I got as far as Amelia. Never owned a PS4, so I never got to play it again. For years, I've just been thinking about it, watching videos and playthroughs. Ended up getting into Sekiro, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, loved them all. And until this year, that same friend lent me her console and I could actually fucking play the game for the first time. Since that time, like a lot of what I like felt and thought about the game the first time has been affirmed. It's kind of changed. The game has many flaws, but I still really appreciate it for what it is. So I think with that being said, it's time to get into this. Are we all ready? Chat, you guys. Let's see.
Yep, I'm ready.
Bing
Hell
bong.
yeah, let's go.
Here
I'm
we
ready.
go. Just one last little glimpse of the beautiful little Terra thumbnail, and here we go.
It's me.
It's you.
It's
And also that
me.
little freak. So, at the risk of coming across like an insufferable superfan, I consider Bloodborne to be pretty timeless. In the face of mixed success and reception after a long-awaited franchise sequel, Dark Souls 2, the studio's first approach was actually not to placate the disappointed fans of Dark Souls. What they did instead was make a completely different game in a completely different game world in the exact style that they always had been doing, refusing to bend to modern design trends and fads. Bloodborne was released in 2015, a year before Dark Souls 3 and that game's regurgitation of the same images, figures, and themes of Dark Souls 1. Bloodborne's approach was, instead, to take what was so compelling at the core of Dark Souls 1's design and translate it to a parallel world, one with a new aesthetic, a new genre, and a variation on the previous themes. It was exciting, one that continues to evoke excitement, wonder, and terror 8 years later. If you own a PlayStation. See, Bloodborne is still, to this day, the only modern From Software title with a console-exclusive release, making the bold decision to channel all of that hype and all that potential within Bloodborne into only one console of that generation. It's one of the only PlayStation titles not to receive a PC port in the 2020s. Uncharted, Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us have all received PC ports in recent years. Not Bloodborne. It is still frustratingly inaccessible. And for that reason, it remains a legendary PlayStation title to this day. For some people, it's the only reason they ever even bought a PS4. Chat, those familiar, old friend of the show, CT, will cite that Bloodborne is the only PS4 game that they ever purchased, and it was the only reason they ever got that console in the first place.
Oh my god.
Yep. It is in close competition with Sekiro for the very best of the From Software catalog. And while that game has a very beautiful intertwining and sympathy with its gameplay and its story elements, what I find so fascinating about Bloodborne years later is its presentation. It's the game world, it's the music, it's the creature design, and there's something that's not just immersive, but utterly arresting about Bloodborne that has lingered in my imagination for years. Before we go any further, I want to pose to you three. Of the FromSoft worlds, I mean, I know some of you guys haven't played the other games, like Bitsy, I know Bloodborne's your only one, but is there another world that you find, like, immersive in the same way that Bloodborne's is? Is there, like, any other one that you feel really invested in exploring every little nook and cranny and every detail?
Probably the original Dark Souls.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. That was the first interconnected one, if I'm not mistaken. And that was great, just running around and trying to jump over with that awkward jump, trying to get everywhere.
There's like when you're going through the Undead Burg in Dark Souls 1, it's that same kind of excitement of looking around at like the overpasses and like walkways of Central Yharnam, seeing how it all like loops into itself. And then on the macro level, you get to completely different like areas of like wilderness, and you're still finding ways where it loops back into the parts of Yharnam you already know. And I think a lot of it for me is the aesthetic also. I think if it wasn't this like this in tune with like Victorian Gothic kind of aesthetic, I would not have
goth
been.
game.
Yep. If it was not a goth game, I don't think I'd be nearly as invested.
Same.
Well,
If it weren't a goth game, I'd like it so much better. Turn the lights on.
Okay.
Please.
Give me some color.
You don't
God,
put
turn some lights
fucking
on,
pink in
please.
this game right now.
Stop! Everything's so yucky.
Unironically, yes.
It's Dark Souls wet.
I've unironically
game
been
a
saying that for
Kleenex.
years. It is so
Yeah.
It is so Dark Souls but wet. Yes.
Is your Dark Souls creepy or wet?
Yes.
God.
Yes. The game's tutorial area does a lot of heavy lifting to establish a distinct identity from Dark Souls right off the bat. The Undead Asylum of Dark Souls 1 kind of eases a player in, right? It teaches them the vulnerabilities and strengths gradually, one by one, with different kinds of mechanical pressure, until they're comfortable enough to fight a tougher opponent and then escape. In Bloodborne's tutorial, you're killed instantly by a giant werewolf. It is only after spawning at the Hunter's Dream after death, you get a weapon at all. And even after giving that werewolf a stern caning, you still have quite a gauntlet left to go. It is, as they say, out of the frying pan and into the angry mob. And it's here that the little mechanical differences, the minutia between the titles, becomes clear. We all know how Bloodborne plays. I don't need to explain to you guys how this is different from Dark Souls, but this is mostly for the benefit of chat and the uninitiated. So, Dark Souls 1, primarily playing with a weapon and shield, is a kind of steady back and forth. You are patient, you wait for your turn to attack, you gotta block, and see if you can stagger an enemy and wait for an opening, back and forth, and so on. If that doesn't work for you, you also have various forms of magic at your disposal. You get different damage types, and with that magic, you get some capability at range. You have a set number of upgradable healing flasks. They replenish upon death or visiting a bonfire. Because of this, the only consequence when you die is just losing your souls gained, which you can regain later, maybe picking up some more along the way. None of those same advantages are given to you in Bloodborne. You have no shield. You have an offhand firearm instead, which does kind of shit damage compared to the melee weapon, and leaves you vulnerable. But it can be used to stagger and open enemies up to a critical attack. You have up to 20 healing items that heal only a fixed percentage of your health, and they are a consumable resource that you have to go out and farm for repeatedly. You have no magic or a shield, but with the new rally mechanic, you can get back some lost health by quickly beating the shit out of your enemy and refilling that bar. The entire design of this game is based around being a hunter of beasts. The game systems are designed to press you to enacting the same animalistic violence that you are faced with. You are mechanically encouraged, very deliberately, to be craven and sadistic and cruel in combat. Hesitation and backwards rolls are even actively punished by the game's AI. The first couple bosses in this area, Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne, each of them have special moves specifically tuned to if you back up to try to get some distance. There is a lot of enemies in this first area, and they are very aggressive, and the compounding cost of repeated deaths means you have a wildly more hostile design than you had before. And you have to be hostile and kind if you have any kind of chance to survive. Now, what I want to ask you guys about this mechanical design alone is, when we compare it to the aesthetic of Bloodborne, the kind of the design tropes and concerns, do we consider Bloodborne a horror game based off of the mechanical combat loop alone?
Yes.
I think so. It scared me a lot.
Retweet.
The The specifically the consumable items, you are constantly have your inventory going up and down with your vials and your bullets. I think you can make a pretty sound argument that it's a survival horror game.
Yeah, literally. That is something that I've talked about Resident Evil and Dead Space on this on this channel before, and one thing that I've really neglected to mention in both of those, because it's so taken for
Resource
granted.
management.
Yes, is how that is like the scarcity of resources is so important to creating an atmosphere of disempowerment in those games. But the thing in Bloodborne is that there is no like set number of vials necessarily. There are set numbers of some resources. You actually have like way fewer options for upgrading your shit in this than previous. But there's absolutely the sense of the more you die and the more you lose your resources, the more disempowered you will be next time. I recently watched somebody. I was watching somebody play this a second ago, and I saw them going through Central Garden for the very first time, and like repeatedly they would be walking back and forth to the Cleric Beast, and they would have like 3 or 4 blood vials on them at any given time, and it is when put that way, it is a desperate and very oppressive experience.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and like I think what I think of it is, I think Austin, you said that this game really did spook you, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a scary game. The crows, they're yelling at you all the time.
Oh my god, the crows.
Yeah,
Intro cutscene with the dream blood werewolf reaching its claws out to you and bursting into like that is the creepiest shit.
That owns. I love
Like,
that
did they
one
ever
so
even
much.
explain that? I feel like I don't remember if they explained why he exploded like that.
I'm sure there's a lore video explaining it, but there's nothing overtly.
Yes.
I just thought it was like a weird fever dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a lot of this is going to be like picking apart like lore bits. I've been a Bloodborne scholar before, and it's fun. But what's important to that scene is that like taking in the ancient old blood beneath the city is probably going to do some weird shit to you. And given the exploding werewolf and the tiny little skeleton boys, I'll actually go back to look at the messengers at the bottom of the screen there. You can, like, the guy even tells you it's all going to be a weird dream, and it certainly feels that way. And I think there's a lot of level design aspects and a lot of the aspects of the creature design that do actually cause some jump scares. I've been playing Half-Life 1 recently, kind of in the background, and that game leans less into survival horror than some of the later entries, but it's still very effective at creating like a effectively immersive environment where jump scares can still happen naturally because your own survival instincts are so easily provoked by the experience.
Oh gosh, the what was it? I think it was in that game. There was like you go up a flight of stairs, and to your right is like a health pack. And then it's timed perfectly, so when you turn to get the health pack, a head crab jumps right at you.
Yeah.
It's like that mechanical interaction. They love doing that in Bloodborne. They hide those crows in the tall grass all the time, and they just jump out with that horrifying sound effect.
Yeah, they kind of
clips your audio.
For those who don't know, the crows like bark in this game. It's fucking weird.
No.
It sounds like a dog that is angry at you and also hatred. The concept of hatred.
For those who don't know, like they have like a 4-foot wingspan and like crawl along the ground on their
They
bellies.
slither.
I didn't
They
even know that they
slither
were
at you. They
according to
don't
that
move
render.
like they don't
Yeah,
move like
like they
birds.
drag.
Oh my god.
Be like Bork.
The other thing about this game that like doesn't necessarily come through in any of these caps, but may later, is that any given thing may have like an oily sheen to it, and the crows are also part of that. If you're unlucky enough to have to look at them, you'll see how slick they are. Fucked up, wet game.
Yeah, the
PS4
werewolf
games
kinda
for sure loved cranking the specular up on everything.
They just greased up the fuck out of all their little guys.
I can
didn't
put
they?
so much slip in this bitch. Stop it.
Such a
Yum, yum, yum,
soggy
yum, yum.
game.
So, and
Someone wring this game dry.
Yeah, this game is very good at provoking actively feral emotions in you, and I think it's very important to how this game diverges from Dark Souls style presentation as well. The fundamental difference is it isn't just that Bloodborne is Dark Souls but wet. Like, that's kind of the catch-all that I've been using. But this is a dying world. It is not a dead one like Origin of Dark Souls. Yharnam was the home of blood administration, the use of a powerful healing substance called the Old Blood that can cure any disease. With the caveat that after its use, the city is now filled with werewolves. The first enemies that you find in this game are these huntsmen, the guys with the pitchforks and the torches, which are different than hunters. They are already in the throes of bestial transformation. The ones whose faces you can see are already shaggy, haggard, and you can kind of see their teeth growing in. One of the things that really jumps out after playing I played this before I played Dark Souls 3, and when I came back to this game, I realized that what I would have missed is these guys talk at you, which is different than what many basic enemies in Dark Souls have been doing. Like, it immediately establishes that these guys are like on the verge of being corrupted to monsters. They are still people in a way. They still have a consciousness. It's very, very disturbing when you like think about it for more than 5 minutes. But when you don't, it's just very, very funny hearing them yell at you Britishly.
You plague-ridden rat!
Yeah, I honestly...
I
had no idea what they were saying until I heard like the bit crushed version in Bloodborne. It removed enough of the Britishness that I was like, oh, this is English, right?
A super tiny tangent. I had to limit the number of lines. I couldn't import every single line because it would be too much, because like too much audio for a PS1 game. So I had to be very, very careful with like choosing the most iconic lines that I felt like everyone knew.
Yeah, you did a good job. I did
genuinely have no idea what
had to be in.
I did play that recently, and I didn't feel like anything was missing.
Good. Mission accomplished then. Hell yeah.
Yeah, like the entire aesthetic tropes going on here are universal monsters, hateful townsfolk with pitchforks, torches, giant trolls, werewolves, witches. If this game had a lower production value, it might feel pretty cheap or campy or tacky. It's the fact that they go so maximalist on the production design here. Everything's so lushly detailed. You kind of forget and kind of forgive that Yharnam feels like a B movie in some ways.
I love it.
There are some hints of something more sinister going on. Even in this early section, you will find little statues in the cathedral district that have these weird cephalopod kind of heads to them. They're weird and alien, unlike anything that you've seen up to that point. It's weird seeing that imagery paired with like the Catholic affectation of it all suggests a later pivot to cosmic horror that this game's gonna make. The concerns of this game are less about the endless cosmic cycle of fire and dark. It is unseen watchers beyond the stars dictating the lives of these people. So even like the play-by-play of this game evokes a similar but like parallel survival horror kind of experience, taken cumulatively with the aesthetic and the lore. There's a lot of conceptual horror going on here as well, like with that combat loop, with the stakes of it all, right? With like when you as a player are feeling such sympathetic resonance with very sinister kind of emotions, you have to step back and kind of think about just what it is that you're doing and how fucked up it actually is sometimes. And we'll get into some of that later. But for now, consider Gascoigne, one of the very first mandatory bosses that you face. The
Bonji, hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Nah, not you too. Shit.
Yeah, I scrutinize every detail to make it low poly.
No, I get it. So, you might find the cleric beast first, but this guy is actually the walk away from the cathedral ward until such time as you beat his ass. He's a hunter, like you, A pretty mad and goofy one at that, with a set of one of your potential starting weapons, and many of your same animations and abilities. He fights a lot like you. He's animated a lot like you. He is a mirror of your own character, in a weird kind of tutorializing kind of way. In his second phase, he swaps that one-handed axe into a double-handed version with a longer reach, reminding you, if you're struggling, that you can swap your approach and damage delivery on the fly if you need to. All of your, most of your, the trick weapons you start with just have, a longer or short-range variant. The threaded cane is kind of a weirder one, but the combination of weapon styles in this gets fucking crazy, and we'll talk a bit about that later. The third phase, however, is instructive in a narrative way. He turns into this big beast form on the bottom right here with the blindfold, becomes more aggressive, but is, I found, at least, very susceptible to your gun parry. This is a narrative warning. As the hunt goes on, as your hunter becomes more steeped in the stench of blood and beasts, they might lose themselves, go mad and become beasts themselves. You're never mechanically at risk of losing control like this, but you would be wise to approach other hunters with caution, as the Yharnamites tend to do. As you're going through this early section, pretty much every locked door with survivors inside tells you to go piss off that they don't like you. Not only do most Yharnamites hate hunters, they seem to hate people from outside of Yharnam, like you. And like Gascoigne here, he's not from the city. Even Father, his title, is not a rank in Yharnam's church. There's a lot more to him than what you see in this fight, though, if you go explore the world thoroughly, though. You find his daughter in a window on the street, and if you come back to his daughter after killing Gascoigne, with the red brooch of her dead mother, she will realize that her father has gone mad and killed her mother. It is only by telling her this at all that she leaves her home, gets lost in the sewers, and gets eaten by a gigantic pig. It takes some back and forthing to see the full extent of that side quest, but you'll get a glimpse at this story from Gascoigne himself. His daughter will give you a music box, one that plays his favorite tune. Playing the box in the fight sends him into a rage, stuns him, reminds him of the person that he used to be. From the very first boss in the game, Bloodborne is telling tragic tales not through words, but through the gameplay and the boss choreography. It is using a lot of words in the fight too. Gascoigne has, I think, more voiced lines in his boss fight alone than anyone else. And they're all incredibly ominous and incredibly sinister. He has this kind of very low, breathy voice that, hot, but
Hi.
yeah. He has actively demonstrated the entire time that something's about to pop out of this boy.
Into me?
Oh.
Please.
It is also my God. When we talked about Sekiro, that game. What's weird to me about that game is that it is pretty flatly sexless for the most part. Coming back to Bloodborne though, it's oh wow, these boys were horny.
Oh my goodness.
No, this I imagine whoever talk about Elden Ring with will be just as unhinged. When we so even the less prominent bosses, the ones that aren't required for narrative, aren't doing so much narrative storytelling, but they give a lot of character through their boss design. The Bloodstarved Beast, this guy on the left here, he shows up at the very bottom of the old Yharnam area in a dilapidated chapel. Yharnam's beasts, being born of the blood, can only be killed once they have been drained of all of their blood. That's why saw weapons are so good on them. This beast was kept alive while it was flayed and bled repeatedly to harvest the potent beast blood within. There is a big chapel in Old Yharnam where you can see another blood-starved beast suspended from the ceiling, its blood dripping down haplessly to the floor. So it has a very fleshy and emaciated design. When it approaches you, it's haggard, slow, really creepy, but it leaps at you with predatory ferocity, appropriate for something so hungry. It wants to maim you and drink you dry. Being a beast, it's also weak to fire, just like our boy the cleric beast was. Clerics turned into the most hideous of beasts, so this gigantic antlered fella is a pretty, intimidating first boss. However, you're given quite a few clues that fire will do the trick on this guy. Molotov cocktails strategically sprinkled throughout the map, beasts crucified and burning in the streets, a note speaking of how old Yharnam and its beasts burned to the ground one moonlit night. There's even a fella named Gilbert who will hand you a flame sprayer and lay this advice out for you more explicitly. If you combine throwing oil flasks with these fire-dealing items, you can shortcut huge chunks of the Cleric Beast's massive health bar, especially if you pair it with a serrated weapon like the Saw Cleaver, a damage modifier that is pretty much unique to Bloodborne. Fun fact, the alternate damage type is called Serration. Serration is the beast one. The alternate one is Righteous, which is like swords and shit. And the only weapon that could do both of those is the Threaded Cane, another one of your starting weapons.
Oh.
Yeah.
I listed the whole game with the Kirk hammer. I'm not sure why.
Threaded cane all the way.
Kirk
The way, baby.
I picked up the saw cleaver and didn't do much else.
When I played with the Threaded Cane once, and I found it was like playing on hard mode, but then I got to Vicar Amelia, and with the whip version, I beat her in one try.
Good.
She's stunned so
love
easily
that
to
thing.
that. Kirk Hammer is a very fine choice. A lot of people like the hammer and the big sword. I don't like big heavy strength weapons in this game. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I mean, anything that moves slowly made me nervous.
You gotta go for the hot dex weapons.
I'll talk a little bit more about my
sorry.
I'll talk a bit more about my builds later. But I find it very, very satisfying to just get the most repeated hits possible. Dark Souls is for the giant swords. Yeah. So I like there's a lot of you have a lot of advantages in your favor when you're fighting some of these early bosses. I, however, had a very hard time with Bloodborne's first couple of hours. I was repeatedly running out of bullets and flasks. I was losing my souls a lot, getting stuck on the blood-starved beast for an hour more than I expected to. The reason for this is because I tend to be a stubborn asshole whenever I play these games, so I tend to just kind of beat my head against the wall whenever I play a Souls game. It's worth noting that the first Souls game I ever platinumed was Sekiro, which actively rewards that effort. More than something like this where you get to look around and find different tools to help you out. For players not like me, though, this game is actively trying to give you all the tools that you need to turn these uphill battles into cakewalks, like the summoning system. Consider this mid-game boss, the Shadows of Yharnam. They're these 3 ring wraith-looking motherfuckers who gang up on you at the end of the labyrinthine Forbidden Woods section. It is a
lizard gang. Sorry.
I pressed the button.
Yeah!
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
I was
Thank you.
waiting to press the button that whole time.
Give it up. Give it up for him.
Straighten this guy.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It never ends. It never ends. It is a 1-on-3 fight, and after going through the very long and very grueling woods section, I found myself really wanting to get this encounter out of the way quickly. Fortunately, the DLC adds a faction called the League, which expands the option for summoning in the game for both NPCs and in online. You unlock the League's rune in these here woods. So, when I fought the Shadows of Yharnam, I was able to summon 2 NPCs to help me with the fight, so it turned into a 3v3 match. Summoning in Souls game incurs a penalty, though. For every summon you bring in, player or NPC, the boss's health is increased by 50%, adding up to doubling the health bar if you bring in 2 people. I kind of don't mind that, though. Bringing in more people for this fight and making it an even match made it really exciting, and the added health bar just meant I got to enjoy that for longer. And it made it so much more manageable. When I found the 3 guys were all ganging up on me, the other guys could pull focus. If not, the 3 of us all went to town on this one guy and just picked them off one by one until they started spawning giant snakes. Bloodborne is... Yeah?
the snakes.
Yes.
Oh, those
yes.
goddamn snakes.
I really. My big issue with the snakes is that once again, what is that, like halfway through the game, a third maybe? That is once again one of the places that the game will remind you, hey, stop backing away from this guy. I watched a man punch the ground, one of these freakazoids, I watched him punch the ground, I was like, something's gonna happen. I assumed something would happen near him, AoE style. I backed directly into 3.5 snakes that were the size of, like, Comcast buildings.
No, yeah.
Fuck these snakes, alright.
Yeah, when I found that I was in snake time, I was my instincts to just repeatedly spam the dash button were rewarded there. Just not backing off and being like, nah, they're not gonna touch me. They ain't shit. Bloodborne's really only hostile in the basic rhythm of the combat and the design of the world. It will never go so far as to leave unskilled players without everything they need to overcome these obstacles, to come out on the other side, and holistically experience the mad and horrible world of Yharnam. The Shadows of Yharnam boss fight. Surprisingly few poison swamps in this game. I don't think I have. I don't think I'm going to be talking about a single poison swamp.
They're shockingly small number. Had to add one.
Yeah,
I had to add it in the DLC.
The Shadows of Yharnam boss fight does take place within the literal Shadows of Yharnam, yes, tucked far away from the city at the end of the woods, much like the old Yharnam district itself. Like Dark Souls 1, a lot of the dense and recursive level design of this game is oriented around ascension and descension through the city. Beneath the soaring towers and cathedrals of the higher districts is this neglected place, the first district to ever fall to the beasts. The homes here are burned and dilapidated, the beasts here sick with poison. At the very bottom is a forgotten chapel, a lonely and collapsing place where the Bloodstar beast is found. It's here that you gain access to the Chalice dungeons, a huge optional section of the game that, narratively, is the place where Yharnam first found the Old Blood, and the remains of a precursor civilization that fell to a beast plague before. So not only is Yharnam built on top of versions of its own self, on top of civilizations that came before even, this is deliberate. It is actively hiding its own past from itself. It is like trying to run away and erase the consequences of its own injustices and inequalities. It's shocking how much of a resonance there is between the history of Old Yharnam and the social inequalities of the Victorian period as a whole. There is less industrial dehumanization going on here, but in its place is systemic pushing out, discrimination, systemic neglect, separations of us and them, sequestering the higher classes and clergy from what American sociologist Charles Loring Brace would call the dangerous classes. And yeah, they are all werewolves now, like that's fair, but all the fires and the sickness and the poison show that even when the old Yharnamites were human, the healing church would have rather abandoned and erased these people than actually help them when in need. Which leads me to wonder, is Bloodborne perhaps the most overtly political game that From Software, the most modern game that From Software has made?
I would say so. Yes, I mean, I would say they all are very political games.
Yeah.
But Bloodborne very much clearly spells it out, with all the doors to where the rich people live locked while the city burns to the ground, and all the rich people turn to beasts anyways, and then you get to cut them all up into tiny little pieces. It's great.
Yep. Like, there are like corrupt power dynamics going on in the Souls games and Elden Ring and even Sekiro. But I think visually this game does such a great job of visually representing the specific issues that it is that it's concerned with, especially when we get into the into the stuff with Mensis, and we get into some of the stuff with the choir, the people who will do these the unwitting unethical science experiments on people harkens back to a lot of the unethical science of this period, the kind of proto-eugenics experiments that were going on with like Slavic and Irish immigrants. Like a lot of
I will say, Sorry. Chat is rioting because we didn't mention Metal Wolf Chaos, and also technically Armored Core can be a modern FromSoft game.
Absolutely.
Oh, Armored Core, absolutely. No, that's so fair.
Yeah, but it doesn't count because it's been a really long time since they made one besides this one.
Armored Core doesn't count because you can't dodge roll. I haven't played Armored Core.
Yeah.
No, you quick step just like a Bloodborne.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you guys to know that my personal picture of the From Software catalog is very incomplete. I have not played the Dark Souls trilogy to completion. I have only platinumed the non-Dark Souls games in this format. I still haven't played the new Armored Core. But trust me, I will make my 12-hour Armored Core video essay will come out shortly after this.
Hell yeah. I have to read out this comment by Havoc Darling saying, politics in my game about the lower class of a stratified city being hunted and killed by its church?
Havoc is more likely than you think.
But what about the political implications of the adventures of Cookie and Cream?
Cookie and Cream lore video.
Oh my god. I honestly I'm so invested in doing that now. Holy shit.
You're a great April Fool's, Chat.
I'll do it fucking seriously. I don't give a shit. Defeating the Bloodstar Beast opens up the Cathedral Ward, home of Yharnam's civic religion, the Healing Church. Irony is Dead, apparently based on that name. Founded on the healing blood and its mutagenic properties. Dark Souls loves a church in a cathedral city, but rarely did the games feel like not only did they go this hard on Gothic design, it never felt like they were trying to create a tangible religion and church system within that framework. You could argue that Elden Ring does something similar with like the orthodoxy of the Golden Order, but not only are there churches everywhere in this game, we have a good understanding of like what their like rituals would have been like, what their beliefs were, what their like hierarchy was, and that's cool. This is the center and the apex of the kind of imperious xenophobia that we've already been introduced to over time. The beasts are here as well, in fewer numbers and in more resembling human forms than previous. The church had their own hunters, who you'll find here. They had either white robes or black. The white robe hunters would immerse themselves in the sickness and madness as a form of study, to learn about the beast plague and its secrets to gain strength. It's why there tend to be like these giant axe boys. Black robed hunters, like Father Gascoigne, were in charge of snuffing out signs of beasthoods before they could even manifest. They are actively feared by the Cathedral Ward citizens. If the black robed hunters are in town, you or your neighbor is probably going to die soon, from either being a beast or being hunted first. If you wear the black church robes and go around and like poke your head in some of the doors there, everyone they'll previously just tell you like to fuck off and get out of here, but they'll like really change their tune to be more anxiously civil towards you.
Oh wow, I'm gonna have to try that sometime.
Yeah, there's a couple more interesting things you wear the church robes and talk to folks, but we'll get to that later. Yeah. The arms of the church's oppression are a bit more insidious here. Their methods more subtle and more deeply scary. The church, in attempting to contain the plague it helped propagate, has in turn bred suspicion and paranoia around not only hunters, but against the church itself. They have a right to be paranoid, of course. What remains of the church and its vicars have become beasts themselves, including Vicar Amelia, the former executive leader of all of Yharnam. Despite being just another big beast guy, even has the same theme as the cleric beast, she has a wonderful boss introduction. It's fucking iconic. She clutches this gold amulet, transforms before your eyes, turns around with this creepy, predatory grin. And,
Borzoi.
puppy.
I love the mix of details on her is wonderful. The puppy
the
face,
antlers.
the weird claws, the antlers.
One of the things that stood out to me is that because she has these bandages about her, one of the things is that like one tendril of bandage stays like curled in a ringlet, and it has its own kind of like physics to it. It's so
Hanging off
like
her ear.
delicate, but also she looks like that.
She does also just look like this.
She does look like that.
Yeah.
Also, just the sheer stark white of all of her beast fur is like she's kind of the cleanest thing I feel like I fight in
Yes.
Bloodborne.
Freshly transformed.
Yeah, crisp as shit, just stepping out.
Could contrast her with the Bloodstarved beast, kind of rotting and decaying and just all, like covered in flesh flaps, spewing
That's
poison
the
at you.
Bloodborne experience.
God.
No,
Me
no.
after I have to send one email.
God. No. Amelia's, she's healthy. She's alive and well. She still has a lot of her own personality, but accentuated to its true self. She's imperious. She's cruel, domineering. She like leaps at you, does like double axe handles, slams at you. This is about your audacity for intruding on her holy ground. It's a very long fight too. She has a pretty big health bar, and she will actually heal mid fight with that amulet that she's got. You can interrupt the healing, but kind of like the Shadows of Yharnam fight, I didn't mind the extra health bar. In fact, I by the time I was on my third playthrough, I was just going at her so much that I just melted that thing away.
And I
yeah,
snagged the shit
lets
out of
her
her and couldn't
heal.
tell she was healing.
Yup. This is
Yeah,
not
like gamer over
Just
here.
lets her heal so I can have the extra challenge and never back away from the grind.
I let her heal because I like looking at her. I want to prolong our time together. Hey, girl.
yeah, hey, come here. Hey, hi. Speaking of girl, this is not the highest point that the church goes to. If you recall, Bloodborne's aesthetic, especially the cathedrals, pivots just about Catholic affectation as it does cosmic horror. Way later in the game, after defeating the boss of Bergenworth and calling down the Red Hunter's Moon, you unlock a secret zone high above the city called the Upper Cathedral Ward. This is the home of a group called the Choir and the Secret Orphanage. Here is where they sought to commune directly with the Divine Great Ones, whose blood has been causing such a fuss. Directly beneath the Grand Cathedral is a boss called Ebritis, Daughter of the Cosmos. She is the primary source of the Church's blood, a harbinger of peace and mutual learning between the cosmic realms. The Choir created these blue blobby fellas to speak with her directly. Each one of them was once a person, transformed somehow into these intermediary figures. Ebritis bears no hostility towards you. She has no animating malice. Until you attack her. Now, a lot of Bloodborne's cosmic horror is in direct dialogue with the work of H.P. Lovecraft, and a lot of the great ones in Bloodborne are designed explicitly in the image of his work. And a lot of his imagery is very suggestive, very non-explicit. It's designed to provoke mood, imaginative illustration, than to create a concrete picture of a creature. Sometimes he just describes something as indescribable. You had to be there. You had to be in the throes of madness to know what this thing looked like. And I look at Ebritis, and I get it. Like, there are so many aspects of her design are so strong and so triumphant at bringing Lovecraftian imagery to life in this way. It's a being whose proportions and form are so obscured by its own alien features. You're supposed to be confused at first about which way she's even facing. Vicar Amelia might be I think she's the last, like, iconic big beast kind of boss you fight in the main game. And this fight, with the most elaborately and lovingly designed eldritch monster in the whole game, takes place directly beneath her. Amazing. But there's this crazy pivot that happens about halfway through the game where if you haven't been paying attention, suddenly it's like, whoa, there's aliens! And it can feel very jarring, but if you were paying attention, there were clues directly beneath your feet the whole time. the hints of something dark and terrible going on are actually laid out way, way earlier. Now, on the way up to the upper cathedral, going down to the workshop tower for the church hunters, is a small, lonely door leading to an abandoned old workshop. It, and the graveyard surrounding it, resemble the hunter's dream exactly. Within the workshop is a plain doll, which looks exactly like the one that you know that's been leveling you up this whole time. If you've been paying attention and digging for clues, you'll know that something isn't quite right about this doll. In the middle phase of the game, when the full moon is high and you've gone through the cathedral world for the first time, the doll will sometimes say to you, quote, "Hunters have told me about the church, about the gods and their love. But do the gods love their creations? I am a doll, created by you humans. Would you ever think to love me? Of course, I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me?" And what hits so hard about that line is that it forces the player to consider your relationship with this mother, sister, daughter, wife who levels you up in a darker context. Do the gods love you, a bloodthirsty hunter who'd kill those gods if they stood in their path? If the hunters are like gods to the doll, like creators, then what is the doll to you? The moment you start the game, you have one directive: seek pale blood to transcend the hunts. Now, pale blood could be referring to any number of things in this game, and creator-director Miyazaki has said repeatedly that he quotes, does not want to go into much more detail about what that means specifically.
Not elaborating.
Like, there are so many moments where he will just like he has gone like put some of the lore of this game, of like this specific game, into more explicit terms. But with what pale blood is, he seems to want that to be the driving mystery that motivates you, and he doesn't want to just ruin that by explaining the mystery. Hell, I don't even think part of me thinks he didn't even have an answer in mind when he came up with that. That's very possible.
I think he just made it up. He's just like, oh, maybe like put it in at the end of making the game. Like, what's something really funny that we could like trick them into thinking they're looking for?
No, that's totally.
Scare them with squids and fishes.
That's very valid. One interpretation of what pale blood is connects to the doll specifically. She is, perhaps, I think, the only being in the entire game that bleeds pale. You'd have to know this by attacking her, which very few people will do, though. And she does allow you to level up, to gain strength. She literally lets you transcend the dangers of the hunt. When you find her version in this mirror workshop, though, you find 1/3 of an umbilical cord on her body. One of the items that you need to unlock the true ending, where you ascend your mortal form. Finally, after every level up with her, the doll will tell you, may you find your worth in the waking world. She is crucial to transcending the hunt in a myriad of ways, but like the nature of pale blood itself, none of the paths that she provide give much concrete clarity as to what any of that even means. All of these places, even the secret workshop, are unified by the, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, just the Uden Chapel in the dead center. It serves as a sort of central hub and sanctuary for many of the NPCs you come across, protected from the beasts by jars of repelling incense, made by this friendly little mutant fella, the chapel dweller. I mean,
oh, I love him.
Look at this guy. Look at this weird little long dude.
Little guy.
He's very much a man.
I want to play chess with him.
You cannot change this.
I think they drafted him as an enemy. I'm so glad they didn't use him like that.
Yeah.
It's always fun when they just put a little guy in the game in FromSoft games.
Such a
You're wondering when he's gonna
voice direction too.
I know.
His little nervous laughs are so good.
It's so funny that
He's so delightfully Cockney as well.
He is. I find it wonderful that some of the most friendly NPCs in this game are either characters you never see, like Gilbert, or characters who are very recognizable, like immediately recognizable as not a human person, like the chapel dweller or the doll, but they're just nice little dudes. They just want to help out.
And the messengers, they're just
And the
funny little
messengers,
guys.
they just
You
want to
can
like
get
Okay, let's be real here. They are an acquired taste. They're not kittens. Like, you do have to... Let's all remember the lives we lived before the first time we saw a messenger. And then we had to be confronted with a messenger. It's the things you feel for those little guys. The things I feel for those little guys that you do too. Stockholms. Adoration. But acquired nonetheless.
Oh my god.
Nasty. They are babies.
Where are my notes? Yep. So Bloodborne has a scant few NPC quest lines, but the ones that stand out are fucking excellent, creating some of the most memorable characters in the entire FromSoft catalog. From Old Yharnam, we have Jura, a hunter who has long passed his time, disillusioned by the church and the hunters and their cruelty to the beasts. They were once people, might still be people after all. So, he defends the beasts of Old Yharnam, from you, up on high, with a Gatling gun. And this is absurd and very funny. He even has a helper, another hunter down in the streets, a boot on the ground, ready to beat your ass in his stead. If you kill Jura, the turret stops. You no longer have to dodge machine gun fire when you're in this area. But if you leave him alive, dodging bullets constantly, until coming back later, you can agree to leave these beasts alone, and he becomes friendly, and gives you his hunter badge. What's fascinating to me is that he is even more steeped in the mire and violence of the hunt than Gascoigne was, but he's lucid. Foolish, but lucid, and compassionate, and still has his manners. And why has he not turned yet? Consider perhaps one of the most iconic NPCs of the whole game, Eileen the Crow. She shows up in Central Yharnam before Gascoigne to lend you some items, and then many hours later, in his boss arena, fighting Gascoigne's old helper, come back for revenge. She is a, hang on a second, I want to type this out in chat real quickly, just so you guys get this, get the spelling right. Yeah, she's a Junta of Juntas. Yeah.
Junta. She's also best girl. I'm gonna say it.
God, she's wonderful.
I am ready to. I'm ready to die on this hill.
This game has girl in it, and she's number one. Top.
She is number one.
There are some.
I'm sorry. There, I said it.
No, I'm willing to. Yeah.
There's some excellent girl in this game, and what's truly boundary pushing is that they all have shoes. Every single one.
Genre pushing.
Does my friend Amelia have shoes? I feel like probably like huge old boots.
Okay, I have to say, Gascoigne, this is pretty next gen. They really used the power of the PS4 for this. Gascoigne is wearing shoes, but when he transforms, his toes poke out the front of his shoes because his feet get too big.
Like old Looney Tunes hobo.
Hey.
I had to study the model to make it in PS1 graphics, and I was like, oh my god, his feet are blasting out of his shoes when he transforms!
Hey, Miyazaki, what did you mean by that, dude? So,
making a little cartoon.
And didn't even paint his nails!
God. So, Eileen is killing hunters who have gone blood drunk, even threatens to kill you if that happens to you. Her quest leads to one of the hardest NPC battles in the entire game, the Bloody Crow of Cainhurst. He is wickedly fast. He uses the quick step skill, has really high blood tinge, which means his gun does dumb damage for firearms, and his melee weapon, the Chikage, a sword coated in his own blood, is even deadlier. Eileen is wounded outside of his arena, too, clearly telegraphing that this will not be an easy fight, and I got fucking stuck on this guy for hours. Longer than I did most of the game's bosses, actually. If you do manage to pull it off and kill him, she will thank you and bequeath the Hunter's Mark Room to you. A symbolic passing of her own duties onto you, a new hunter. Now, if you don't find her, if you don't go and talk to her in Central Yarnum or find her in the arena, if you go to the Crow's arena, it's her instead. She goes mad. She turns hateful. She accuses you of going mad with bloodthirst. That all the hunters need to die. And it's a much easier fight. She has a much simpler moveset, and it's sad. It's desperate. It's a betrayal of your own stated purpose. Especially if you knew about this character by reputation and just somehow missed the side quest. Seeing what would become of Eileen were it not for your assistance lends some weight and drama to either side of the quest. And it begs the question, what does it take for hunters to go mad? Why did Gascoigne lose himself and Jura didn't? Why did Eileen only go bloodthirsty in this set of circumstances? I have an idea, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts first.
I think a recurring theme in like every FromSoft game is that you as the player character just sort of like inadvertently, like either through like a butterfly effect type deal or directly, you just sort of like ruin everyone's lives around you. And it seems to be just like very correlated with your actions, like either, if not directly, then indirectly in some way. And but it is a very good way of making you feel bad all the time by like showing you, this is your fault, by the way.
Austin, thank you so much. I think you and I are kindred spirits in our approach to this game and the effect it had on us.
Yeah.
I actually have a kind of an opposite answer to that entirely.
Interesting.
So, it is precisely because of your influence on hanging out with Eileen that she is able to hold on to her sanity.
That's what I always did it.
Yep.
If you're not there, she goes crazy.
It is specifically because Jura has a helper in Old Yarnum that he's able to hold on to himself. Gascoigne had a helper too, a guy named Henrik, whose gear
the
description...
yellow guy.
Yep,
Henrik.
He has a wonderful armor set. Its description reads that Henrik led, quotes, a tragically long life. But Henrik is nowhere to be found. Henrik goes looking for Gascoigne after you kill him. So because of their separate, perhaps if they were not separated, he would have held on a little longer.
Henrik, sorry, go ahead.
No, you say your thing first.
Oh, I was gonna say, what I really liked in the Henrik fight is that he is programmed to spam the scream emotes.
Oh my god!
When you fight him, which I always really loved. It makes him easier because he gets locked in an animation. But I always thought that was tragically beautiful.
I never noticed that.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh my god! Yeah, and like. Yeah, Jura and Eileen both owe their sanity to a second hunter, and it's not just their text. Several text and dialogue sections in this game repeat that a hunter is never alone. It is a literal hint that summoned help is always available, but also a narrative hint that in order to survive the hunt, you need to maintain your human connection to somebody in order to keep yourself grounded. You cannot believe your hype too much. Otherwise, you end up like Alfred. Now, there's this conehead NPC that you meet near the Odin Chapel named Alfred, wearing these layered white robes, and at the time he doesn't have the conehead. He has, this very nice, gentle blonde hair. He speaks in a soothing, affable voice, which a Dark Souls player might recognize as the same voice as Solaire, the friendly knight who helps you in so many co-op scenarios throughout that first game. Alfred tells you the history of Bergenworth and Castle Cainhurst, how a scholar from Bergenworth took a sample of the old blood to the Cainhurst noble line. The lineage became powerful, their new mixed bloodline, yielding deadly magics and abilities, which threatened to usurp the balance of power in Yarnum. They were branded heretics, vile bloods, as they're repeatedly called. And the church sent in a group of zealots called the Executioners, led by a man named Logarius. What Alfred won't tell you right away is that the massacre was so brutal that Logarius waded through a whole river of blood as his warriors slaughtered their way through the castle. All that remains are the ghosts of noblewomen and these starved mosquito girl-looking things, which are the closest this game has to vampires.
Oh,
Gary,
it's not a Dracula.
That's
It's not a little.
It's some kind of it's one of those Ferratu.
Oh, it's a those Ferrat. I see.
For my Spanish-speaking audience, it's a Los Ferratu.
Ah.
My God. Now, Ligarius is also still here. So much later, an aged and withered form of his older self. His lifespan artificially extended by consuming so much of the vile blood. He also now has the same magic as they do. He casts them like a blood wizard. It's an amazing fight, actually. It's a dramatic climax to one of the game's most beautiful and truly optional areas. Ligarius is one of my favorite bosses in the whole game. Ligarius wears the Crown of Illusions, which hides a secret wing of the castle behind a thick layer of fog and snow. Annalise, the Vile Blood Queen, cannot be killed. Ligarius sought to conceal her, to keep her will and presence away from the world as his final wishes, remaining here eternally, so that there will be some line to draw on all of the bloodshed and death he was party to. There was a part of him that actively regretted this massacre. Alfred believes the hype too much, though. And if you give him a summons to Cainhurst, he will climb the castle and he will beat Annalise to death into a fleshy pulp with this giant wheel, cackling wickedly as the moon shines on his blood-soaked body. You can still revive Annalise. She isn't permadead as long as you have access to the altar guarded by Abritus, but what a shocking way to end this storyline. It is possible, even likely, that the vicars of the church were pragmatists, concerned with their own power, and were more worried about eliminating competition to their sole rule of Yharnam. This is the same church that would rather poison and burn old Yharnam to the ground than save its remaining citizens. How dangerous, then, must actual true believers in the church be? People who really believe in a religion of blood and violence and the ancient whispers from beyond that blood brings. Alfred is sincerely one of the most sinister characters in the entire game, despite looking just about the goofiest. So I'm gonna take this opportunity to talk in detail about how I got through this game, because you've now covered all of the points where I would get these things. So, the gear you get in Cainhurst Castle only seemed appealing to me after I played the game once already. When I started the game, I went straight for Jura's weapon, the stake driver. I really liked the idea of using a punching kind of weapon in a game with very hostile enemies. I would later get the Whirligig Saw as well, a giant saw blade on a stick with high damage on beasts, a big range, and a really fun moveset. And I used Ludwig's rifle for my firearm for generally high damage and good spread. I would get consistent parries with... I parried one of the fucking shark giants with Ludwig's rifle. And I didn't think that was possible.
Wait, you can parry the sharks?
Yeah, you can parry the sharks as they dive at you. I did that exactly once.
Oh my golly! Oh
yeah!
I'm here for that.
It was fucking crazy. The stake driver is a pretty balanced skill and strength weapon, and its trick weapon variants switch between slashing and piercing damage, which has fine utility. But the charged heavy attack for the piercing form has one of the longest windups of any attack, but it does the single highest damage output of any single move in the game. And that was very appealing to me. I would go out of my way to kill bosses with the exploding stake driver move as many times as I could. I kind of regret playing the game this way, though. Like, when it came down to it, I liked that it was fast, I liked that it was kind of short range and it rewarded my aggression, but it's kind of an average quality weapon. And there's just so many more interesting forms and like weapon styles in this. It didn't like challenge my basic habits of playing this game, like my second build did. I played this. I used this first build to play my New Game Plus, which I beat in like 3 hours. I just blasted through the optional content and just went straight for the second ending. And because I missed out on the levels that completionist play would have given me, I decided that I would do my third playthrough with a completely different character on a fresh file. So for this one, I like the gun rapier, I like the Chikage, and I like the Evelyn firearm. I went for what people call a skill tinge build. So because of the blood tinge scales with both the Chikage and Evelyn being one of the higher damage firearms of the game, and because of this, the pistol was doing really heavy hit stun and damage. And the Chikage second form is just deadly as all hell. It is the exact same moveset that the Bloody Crow of Canehurst uses, and I felt just about as deadly as he did. It was kind of an uphill struggle to play it this way, though. Let's see, where's my notes? Yeah, I meant that I was spreading my basic stats very thin between some stats that I wouldn't get to use till like the mid to late game. You don't get any like melee weapons that scale with Blood Tinge until the castle, which is kind of late. Yeah, that meant I was really only doing by the time I got to having the Chikage, it meant that I was only really doing viable damage when I was slowly bleeding to death. What I think the intended balance, I think what they were going for was that you're supposed to get these kind of blood tinge and arcane weapons on your new game plus. You would use a basic performance build like I did, and then on your new game, because of the kind of low level caps, you could just easily add blood tinge to your build and pick up one of these more interesting things on the second time. I think that's the design as intended. So doing it with something more simple like a sock lever or a Ludwig sword, and then going in and trying some of the DLC, and the DLC also adds even more blood tinge and arcade scaling weapons, which would accommodate playing it this way. But I don't know if I'm ever gonna go back to playing Bloodborne. I had to give that PS4 back. But I'm very excited to do this some other time because it means I'll get to experiment with this idea and all these other different builds, and in ways that I never really got to optimize myself like I did my first playthrough, where I didn't quite know what was going on with the balance here.
Hey, don't worry. There's always a Bloodborne's PC port.
Yay. The final piece of character customization you get in this game is at the end of a place called Hemwick Charnel Lane. It is a small hamlet filled with witches and hunting dogs just behind the Grand Cathedral. This is actually the road that once led to Castle Canehurst, now littered with axe-wielding church giants still on patrol for Vilebloods or their sympathizers. The women of this village used to be systematically killed here, their bone marrow harvested and reduced to ash for its stimulating properties that would make your firearms stronger. Past a pretty short gimmick boss called the Witches of Hemwick is a corpse that grants you the Rune Workshop tool. There are 24 basic runes with different tiers of potency between them all, with 6 higher tier runes with fixed unique effects like giving you expanded summoning options or just making you look like a werewolf. They provide some generous little buffs to your build that can give you slight breathing room in areas you might be struggling. It is pretty straightforward mechanically, but I find the narrative connection here to be fucking nuts. The runes were all taken down, all recorded, by a guy named Runesmith Carroll, who succeeded in recording the language, the spoken language of the Great Ones, into writing. The runes, then, confer power simply by existing as representations of alien speech. Which, the reason I find this crazy is because it's one of the few bits of magic or paths to power in this game that actually interacts with how real life systems of magic work, where representations and semiotics carry more weight than how magic spells in Bloodborne actually work, which, as far as I can tell, is based on the amount of parasitic slugs that you have let inside of you. It's different than just like, if I consume this item, I will be able to throw fireballs in real life. The fact that it's all in, like, the runes give you magic in such, like, little, barely noticeable ways, like, all is also consistent with this. And it's completely outside of the magical binary that governs all the player paths to power in this game: blood and insight. Now, blood is tied to your levels, you know, your guns, the gems that enhance and alter weapons. Insight lets you summon, gain rare items and gear from the insight shop. The runes use neither of those things. And this is even acknowledged in the tool's item description. It reads, Provost Willem would have been proud of Carol's runes, as they do not rely on blood in any measure. Now, there is a man in a ceremonial robe and mask that you sometimes see. He is very large and wrinkly on your screen right now. He once warned his friend against using the blood for its healing power. Fear the old blood, he says. It is a powerful and dangerous substance that should be treated with respect and reverence for its destructive potential. Ironically, Willem sought power using insight, exposure to the beyond, to give himself eyes on the inside. You find him later in his rocking chair, and he is so far gone that he can barely be bothered to acknowledge you or defend himself in any way. His skull is literally lined with eyeballs. Blood and insight, both equally destructive and powerful, and far more corruptive than the runes ever are. And it's only by hallucinating Willem's old adage that you gain access to what may be my very least area in the entire game. The Forbidden Woods.
Least
To
area?
its
The least
credit.
area of all time.
The least area.
Thanks!
Now, to this place's credits, it has some excellent monsters. It has these guys with snake heads that kind of look like those enemies from Resident Evil 4. It has giant tangles of snakes that are literally called snake balls.
Snake balls. The snarls. I call them snarls.
Yes. Now
No.
there's actually a detail. I forgot to get an image of it, but you know
Snarls.
how the much larger snarls will have like these kind of warts entangled up in them.
Yeah.
They kind of stick out of them.
Yes.
Now, a friend of the show, Bogleach, is doing a Bloodborne project right now. And he pointed out to me that like as he was writing his notes, that those little warts are ticks. They are
That's
little.
disgusting.
Yeah, they are ticks that, like, if you like look at actual snake ticks, like they look exactly like the ones here. So they are a actual visual representation of how the pathogen has transferred over to these creatures.
Well, so you don't want to eat these snakes.
No.
Sorry, I needed to find some way to bring it in.
Damn it!
No, you're right, and you should say it.
I hate that you didn't do that when I literally showed the snake eater ladder earlier.
Oh, damn it! You're right. I did miss that.
Ah, very nice.
Awesome.
Now,
5 gift subs to the channel.
ooh, thank you. I'll be doing more.
Yay.
I'll be doing more call outs when we take our breaks. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a dark and foggy forest filled with blind corners and surprise enemies who scare the shit out of you with their writhing and intimidating designs. I think I got jump scared more in this zone than anywhere else. The thing that sucks about the woods is its very basic tenets of level design. As we've said before, Yharnam is very dense. It loops in on itself. It connects back and forth with each other in surprising ways. One familiar area comes back into another in a micro and macro level. There's even a section of these woods that connects back to the area behind the clinic in the very beginning of the game. It's the woods themselves do not have the same design philosophy. They are sprawling, they're monotonous visually. There's about 2 shortcuts and 1 checkpoint in the whole area. There are secret pathways that sometimes lead to surprises and sometimes just lead to dead ends filled with monsters. It is also the region that has the Shadows of Yharnam, but by the time you unlock that boss, even with the shortcut, it could take like 3 minutes just to walk to the guys. It's
Wait, which boss?
the Shadows of Yharnam. Like,
I knew it.
people hate me. You hate me. God damn it. Yeah, those fucking guys. Yeah, it takes like 3 minutes per attempt to walk back to those guys. It fucking sucks. I like what's going on here conceptually. You know, there's this secret village and forest filled with Yharnam's exiles and the snakes mutated by the infection. Another instance of the church trying to hide its past, burying the path to Bergenworth. But it's like, it feels a bit more like a wilderness area that I would have seen in like a Dark Soul, you know? And I don't always like being able to connect things back to a Dark Souls design.
It's like Dark Souls with guns. I see now.
Yeah. It's this game. It's kind of its least creatively bound pushing. But what I do like is this weird bandaged fella. He is literally just named the Suspicious Beggar. Like he comes like suspiciousbeggar.png, and like you find him crouched over a corpse with blood up to his elbows, as you can see, and he's like, "Oh, hello. Do you know any safe places? It's so scary out here." And like by this point, you've been sending so many survivors back to either the chapel or the clinic, and they've all been like fine. Like, none of them have had, like, some of them have been a little, aggro, but none of them have actively been malicious. If you are suspicious enough of this beggar, you can attack the guy, and he turns into a giant electric werewolf. What's
with
fucking
rubber
crazy?
band arms.
What's crazy about this guy is that he speaks to you. He calls you a monster yourself, saying that the hunters all brought this on themselves. And it's not what he says that's interesting to me. It's how he even says it. This is, as far as I can tell, one of the only beasts in the entire game who transforms seemingly at will, doing so in a way that maintains his speech and cognition. I have to wonder. I wish we saw a few more creatures like this, because it begs the question: how many more like this are there? How many more of them are like still like, you know, like eloquent and conscious, but just look like beasts? If beasthood is both a physical and mental transformation, and blood-drunk hunters, for instance, are only a mental transformation, does that mean that one could just turn into a beast and stay lucid?
That's actually the plot of Devilman Crybaby.
Motherfucker, it is. It is.
Wait, but what if...
I
don't know. Oops, sorry.
I had to concentrate for a second because I thought you said the plot of Devil May Cry, comma, baby.
I heard the same thing.
Yeah, fuck that show's stupid ass title. It's great, but god damn it.
Yeah.
So, what are the chances? I don't know that FromSoft has ever like used a trope like this, but what are the chances that your like player character is just hallucinating the guy speaking to you or something like that?
Oh
know?
My god.
I don't know.
Of all the things to be like just a hallucination in the game, I count that very low on the list of potentials.
Yeah.
Well, there's
a lot of things that could be.
Yes.
Ooh, can you flag me some things that would be high on the list?
I think we're probably going to talk about some of those in a second.
Yee! I have thoughts. Go on.
It begs the question: what is the line between man and beast? What happens when that line blurs? Now, it is possible to get abducted and sent to prison in this game. It's a place filled with all these burlap sack fellas and these strange statues of alien-looking things, which connects to an area called Yahargul, the Unseen Village. It is disconnected from anything else in Yharnam up to that point, aside from another lightning beast called Dark Beast Parl, whose boss arena connects back to Old Yharnam. This whole zone is kind of a weird non sequitur when you first find it. It's a strange and empty place, almost entirely devoid of living people and filled with only small beasts and also giant pigs just outside. The jail itself is a pretty short zone, but if you walk into the village for some rare early game loot, a low and haunting chant starts playing in the background. It's one of the only overworld areas to have any kind of background music outside of a boss fight. The jail indicates a variation on the tone and aesthetic you're familiar with, and a creeping sense that there's something more to this place than you see at first. Now, about those woods again. After the Shadows of Yharnam in the Byrgenwerth zone, there is a boss at this moonside lake called Rom the Vacuous Spider. The Scholars of Byrgenwerth wanted to create a great one of their own, one that they could control. Rom is the closest they got. She has ascended her physical form, turned around, but the cognitive strain of such a transformation, of such exposure to eldritch secrets, has destroyed her mind.
Round.
Now, something kind of funny. Her head resembles something on the altar where Abritus hangs out, the one that she's kind of like mourning to, which begs some people to like wonder if there's some kind of connection between them, or if Rom and Abritus are connected somehow. I don't necessarily know, but what is interesting is like being turned around like this has completely destroyed her mind. She is vacuous. She has very little animating consciousness left. She has a very exceedingly simple move set. Big AoE slams and blasts. She wiggles around her body in tantrums. She throws these horrible little ad spiders to fight you in her stead. Now, she is, unwittingly, holding back a dark secret from Yharnam, the true power of the baleful full moon. Killing her will release the blood moon's power and send the night into a final, terrifying phase. When you come back to Yahar'gul after doing this, the night sky turns purple, and these horrifying tentacled fellas, named the Amygdala, are the ones that are scattered at the edifices and rooftops of Yahar'gul. Now, this may seem like a wild disruption of the tone, but if you've been paying attention, they've been here the whole time. With 40 insight, you can see these guys long before they reveal themselves here. Friend of the franchise, Patches, will even trick you into getting killed by one, which you can fight later in the optional Nightmare Frontier region as a boss. These things are depicted everywhere. Its faces appear on cathedral statues. There's a statue of one in the village jail. A scrap of paper you find in the game tells you that when the red moon rises, the line between man and beast is blurred. Did this moon rise at the coming of the beast plague? Has its distant concealed echo been driving Yharnam into madness this whole time? Is this somehow connected to Pale Blood? There's a lot of a lot of this lore is like surprisingly concrete. There's a lot of things that like loop back to itself in pretty tangible ways. Just enough of it is cryptic and strange to provoke a lot of fear and wonder in the player. Like these big skull jack-in-the-boxes on the bottom right there. You would find those guys as pigs earlier. This red moon transforms them somehow. You have to wonder, were they like this the whole time? And one thing that is kind of upsetting about this phase of the game is that when you go to areas that are not Yahar'gul, the other enemies are not transformed in similar ways. It implies that it was just here, and I think that's kind of a shame. I would have really liked to go back and find out that every single werewolf that I saw was this weird amalgam of flesh and limbs.
The fleshy ones with the feet tail. I remember the feet tail.
Yeah,
the tail's a foot.
I would have loved to. Mm-hmm.
Oh, can we go back to Rom really quick? Not just because it's fun to look at.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, it's she, right? This spider's a girl.
A surprising number of the bosses in this game are girl, actually.
Based.
Yeah.
We love to see woman representation in video games.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very clearly not a spider, though, right? It's the
yeah,
like,
she herself. Like that is a pill bug. That is not a spider.
I like to think that like maybe with the with a normal bug that's not a spider, not a bug that eats other bugs. Being elevated to something higher than itself for the bug was like becoming a spider. just as becoming a great one for humans would be like becoming their own predator in a sense. I like to think of that as like a little metaphor, where it's like that's the equivalent of ascension for a bug is to become a spider. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah,
I love that.
The basic assumption is that Rom was a scholar of Bergenworth herself, but I love the idea that she was literally just a spider.
I like to think that she's just like a little bug they found on the ground.
I think someone caught her under like a cup and some paper, and they were like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I can't kill her."
God. Man, what did Mikolash do to this fucking thing?
Me and the bug I found in my bathroom.
So, not
Oh,
all
I look
of
with blood
the...
self pronouns.
Now, not all of this part of the game is wholly awesome. There are some parts of it that are a little weird and uncomfortable. Now, the Red Moon causes some weird, gross stuff to happen. And I mean grosser than, like, the flesh monsters from the village. The true ending of the game requires consuming 3/3 of an umbilical cord, like the one you found in the abandoned workshop. You can find another one at the very top of the Tower of the Nightmare of Mensis, the final area of the game. The other two are found in more uncomfortable circumstances. As for the first, there is a woman named Ariana, a sex worker who appears to be kind of a body double for Queen Annalise of the Vile Bloods. There is another woman named Yosefka, who's closed off the clinic you wake up in from outsiders, who gets replaced by a mad member of the choir, who reopens that same clinic to gain human experiments. Both women are raped. Somehow, an unseen being, perhaps the Great One, called Formless Odin, impregnates these two women with unholy abominations, stillborn infant Great Ones. Odin mistakes Ariana for a monarch, perhaps thinking somehow a child born of her royal lineage will assume leadership of the city. Odin answers the false Yosefka's plans to make contact with the Great Beyond, answering her prayers by committing the same cosmic rape on both women. You might argue, that sounds exploitative and in extremely poor taste, and you would not be incorrect, especially as these atrocities are, to you the player, mere vehicles for obtaining the MacGuffins for your own quest to Ascension, if that's your chosen ending. Both women die when you harvest the cords. You are not allowed narrative sympathy or even mechanical sympathy to these two victims of space sexual assault. So, what the fuck did they mean by this?
I don't know. I didn't even catch that, to be honest. I don't read all the item descriptions as close as I should when I play through this game.
It's
Women should suffer.
It's
End of sentence.
It's bad. I don't like. There's some clarifying details we'll talk about later that spin a potentially less uncomfortable tone about it, but just like it's weird that like this like association of like childbirth and failed childbirth is paired 1-to-1 with all the weird cosmic monsters and flesh werewolves, right? It's like it's like Miyazaki is saying that like women give birth scary to me. I don't understand this.
That's the thing. I think if you spent enough, I think you wouldn't have to spend that much time or do that much brain stretching to understand the angle or understand an angle wherein birth, conception, loss, violent loss is inherently horrific and can have to do with beings and forces beyond a normal individual's control. I think pairing the potential for literal visceral disgust and horror and flinching associated with pregnancy and all of its trials, whether you make it to labor or not, there's room there. I'm not saying it's good room to play, but then also, fuck the other thing. But then also there's just going to be, I think, a general social fallback that you can take here, wherein violence against what is visually a woman, what is visually a not unattractive woman, counts as this will make you flinch. I am
Yep.
here to inflict fear and discomfort and unsettle you. In much the same way, I think the trial scene in To Kill a Mockingbird, and you realize the Cunningham family secret unfold in front of you, is supposed to wrench you. I think this is a man who decided, I think the great unknowing of cosmic horrors is not unlike what can happen to someone's body. And what if they kissed? What if Lovecraft and pregnancy kissed?
And there is references all over the game, with the cycles of the moon and the castle's literally called Mensis. And
Yep.
the moon.
Who fucked the Mensis? God shit.
There's also what is it, Murgo? Murgo.
Oh yeah,
Wet
yeah.
Nurse.
We'll be talking
Yeah.
about
Fuck
Murgo and the Wet
baby.
Nurse later.
Yeah. My favorite Bloodborne kart racer.
Oh my god. So
Is the
Do we ever actually
haze-
see the baby? Like, is it like a real
The
baby?
baby.
The-
It's
the-
a real
the-
baby, but it's invisible.
yeah.
Can we drive the cradle in Bloodborne cart?
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
If you do as a hunter, it turns you into the baby great one because a hunter wouldn't fit in the cradle. So
I think I'm
That's
gonna
so
learn
good.
to draw just so I can draw the
The
Bloodborne
squid.
hunter.
I
Looking like
I
a,
love the
Baby
visual of
Baby.
just a gun floating disembodied.
that was the original concept art in the Discord channel. It was a baby bird with a gun photoshopped onto it.
It's so good. It's so good. So
There's, there's something like really interesting about like the way that FromSoft games are like feminist in a sense, where like
really stretching that one, huh?
yeah, like really painful to say that word, but like it's like like it was one of those games that came out in 2011 where like picking your gender like truly had no impact on the game, and like I don't know, it was very irrelevant, except the fact also that like all the caretaker roles in all the games are just women, you know what I mean? Like
Sissy
Yeah.
mama, daughter, wife, sweep. Let's go. Give me
So many, like literally one per game.
there's just like gotta be like a mommy in every game.
Yeah, the more Miyazaki makes games, the more of the question of like whether this thematic, like whether this thread is like intentional or not. Like you could see it as just like, oh, we're just engaging with the source material a little too haphazardly. But like,
Yeah.
Even up through Elden Ring, it's like, yeah, Miyazaki's still very weird about women sometimes. Yeah.
I think if you got Miyazaki and Kojima in a room together, Freud would start like
my God.
physically ripping himself out of the ground and screaming from his grave.
Absolutely. Now, these two are not the only victims. There is a third, deeply obscured by what may be From Software's most spiteful and tedious sequence of levels in the modern era. In the lore, Yharnam is not the first civilization to fall to the beasts. It is, in fact, built on top of the buried ruins and tombs of older previous civilizations. One was called the Thumerians. Their monarch was named Queen Yharnam. Her name is literally what the modern city is named for. In the main game, she's simply a fleeting vision, a ghost who appears at a few moments in the late game. The first is after killing Rom at Bergenworth, the academy which first discovered the Old Blood and the Thumerian catacombs. Those scholars included Willem, the current head of the school, Lawrence, the first vicar of the church, Carol, the man who created runes, Gurman, the keeper of the hunter's dream, and another man named Mikolash. Mikolash sought to carry on the traditions of Bergenworth to more sinister extremes, creating the School of Mensis, locked away in a nightmare realm that perpetuates the Red Moon and the Night of the Hunts deliberately. The realm was created by Murgo, an invisible infant Great One. The way up to Murgo's loft is the second place you find Queen Yharnam, bleeding from her womb, just like the first time, crying and mourning for her own lost child. You might assume that Murgo is that child, but that's not made explicit in the main game. What you can deduce is that she, long ago, carried an infant Great One who was never born. It is a pleasant and cryptic suggestion of deeper history to the city, and evidence that this, like the repetitive Night of the Hunt, is a cycle repeated across time. It also helps put the other two stillborn Great Ones in better context. The item description of the cords elaborate that the Great Ones are, for the most part, genetically unique and cannot reproduce with each other naturally. So, they wander the stars in search for willing hosts, hoping to find one that will produce favorable conditions for offspring.
Willing.
Willing is a rough way to put it. Although I will say, if Mikolash could get pregnant, he would. I think he'd be down.
Based on that fucking moaning he does, he's trying to be.
We have to keep trying, guys.
Oh,
We have to keep trying.
Good God. Yes, so they always lose their children in the process, though. This is strange, but also very sad, in a way that blends the cosmic and gothic horror elements pretty elegantly, actually. Child mortality was rampant in the Victorian period. The general mortality rate in England in 1841 ran high, about 30 to 35% for every 1,000 people. But for children under 5 years old, it was high as 45. 450 out of 1,000 children dying every year, not accounting for miscarriages or parents killed in childbirth. Yep. Like, there was, like, when we talk about, like, societal fears of blood and childbirth and the loss of your children, it was tangible back in the day. The image of Queen Yarnum praying for her child and bleeding from her womb was not the stuff of ghosts and haunts. It was a lived reality. Ariana, Yosefka, and Queen Yarnum, all inheritors of, quotes, the Victorian slaughter of the innocents. Now, when I played this first game, this was all resonant to me. I did literally study this time period. So even as a mystery, there are aspects of these characters that felt, real and tangible. But for others, it's a weird, cryptic illusion that does have a tangible conclusion. You just have to turn over some real shit to get to it. Now. The narrative idea behind the Chalice Dungeons is that if you're going to have a city filled with Lovecraftian madness and terror, there ought to be an area that contains the dark secrets of the world buried away in tombs where only the mad and foolish would venture. Right? These are the Chalice Dungeons. Kind of a cool concept, narratively. It's
conceptually.
Yeah, you could argue. You could argue that it's cool. It's filled with.
It does have the Kun dungeon, so it is.
That's actually in my notes later.
Sorry, man, you guys are so cool with your PS Plus. I wish I could have Cum Dungeon.
Now, yeah, it's got all these withered out Temerian fellas and some pretty neat bosses that don't appear in the main game, like all of these round, oily dudes. What is not cool is that they are an entirely optional zone made up of tile-generated dungeon layers with the same repeating bosses over 5 whole depths of difficulty, which is visually monotonous, mechanically tedious, and experientially very, very boring. Now, the new boss designs are very cool. I like seeing this. I like the Keeper of the Old Lords, this fire witch looking lady, and it's no doubt it's very interesting to see some of the content that didn't make the cut for the main game. But I imagine if you were someone who had played Dark Souls and were doing these dungeons in repetition, they'd get kind of old. Like I didn't picture the Bogleash even pointed out to me the hunting dogs in this game. Like they're kind of these like little shaggy fellas for most of the time. When we get to places like Hemwick, they have these weird spikes embedded in them. But the hunting dogs in the dungeons are weird, like hellhound looking things. It is much more in the dark fantasy realm of things than either of the modes of horror going on. There are some rare loot and blood gems in the dungeons. There's upgradables that give your weapon some needed edge to speed up your progression in the main content. You know, give you some more physical damage or add some elemental variants. Like, if you're doing the Chalice dungeons in parallel to the main game, you'll come up with a better quality of loot. That's true. They are self-perpetuating, generating off of seeds to create nearly infinite Chalice dungeon variations, and self-justifying, requiring you to repeatedly grind lower-level dungeons to get the materials to access the next one. The first 2 depths are pretty manageable. We unlock them around like levels 25 to 35. Depth 3 scales really high, and then 4 or 5 even more so. I played most of the main content. I played most of the main content of the game and only went to the dungeons when I got stuck on a boss. So, like, I get stuck on wrong, and I'm like, I'll go do some dungeons real quick. So I kind of breezed through the first depths, got stuck, came back later, then got even more stuck on a depth 4 dungeon. And I didn't know at the time that the dungeons will save your progression across New Game Plus runs, and they don't scale. Which means I could have just come back later after beating the game once, gaining some levels, and would have had a much better time with the game as a whole.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Didn't know that either.
Yep. I hated it.
Golly.
I hated fucking every part of this. I kind of don't regret doing it, though. So, I knew that the Chalice dungeons would be bad content by reputation, and I kind of wanted to see whether or not that would be true, just to spite people. But like, people kept telling me that the dungeons were hard, and that wasn't necessarily true. They just assumed a different level of advancement and progression and engagement from the main game, and it was really fascinating to see how this how this all played out, because like so much of the main game is like so streamlined and deliberate and focused and consistent on delivering a strong world and game experience. The dungeons are not, and I have to think, Bloodborne was such an experimental title just as a whole. It is based in so many different priorities than what came before. I have to assume that there's it was kind of a shame to like have all of these new designs that kind of bridge the gap between the Dark Souls and Bloodborne design sensibilities that they didn't just want to do nothing with. Like, there was a real, like, I would say that a lot of these enemies would have fit right in with Elden Ring, but if they didn't know they were going to make an Elden Ring like that, might as well find like a new zone to justify using them. And I think I think that was very fascinating. It's like very cool going in and seeing like the kind of rough drafts of this game. However, if there's any part of the dungeons that are actually hard, it's the penultimate dungeon in the set, not the last one. So enemies, so in a depth 4 dungeon called the Defiled Chalice dungeons, enemies will scale up to where you would be in New Game Plus and reduce your maximum health bar by half, but the percentages of elemental damage your enemies do stay the same to what your health bar would be. So they will simply one-hit kill you constantly. Now,
this is where I got stuck.
Yes, so
This is where I refuse to go.
Yes, yeah. I would not blame you. See, I was under the impression before I ever got into FromSoft games that they were, very cruel. Like, just they have quite a reputation for being like arbitrarily difficult, and I've come to realize since then that they're they are very fair. I think I've described enough like the ways that Bloodborne has been fair to me and like given me some slack, even though it is like pretty hostile. Like, it still wants you to succeed. It still wants you to, get through the content. And it's, once you can get into that, you'll see like how creative and how fairly balanced the game is. The difficulty discourse kind of paves over all that shit. So I had no idea. And then when I came to this part of all the
Yeah.
of all the games that I've played, over Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, I finally found like exactly what the difficulty discourse led me to believe these games would be like.
Same.
It's fucking ridiculous.
God, that defiled chalice. Oh my good golly, gee willikers.
I spent like an entire fucking week on this. Most of that time was just on the defiled amygdala boss. He has a gigantic health bar, and he has like his normal AoE moveset, and he just outright killed me the moment I entered the arena. Like, I wanted to fucking throw my controller through my monitor over and over again. If I was not streaming this game for an active audience, I had people on voice chat with me, talking to me. I had a chat to keep me company. If I didn't have those people, I would have done something drastic.
I would have taken matters into my own hands.
Yes. This time I finally would have done it. Yeah. Thank God for that, because I did hate every fucking minute of this.
I'll say, like, Bloodborne is, I feel, in my opinion, like, the most, like, aesthetically and, like, narratively compelling FromSoft game, in my opinion. But, like, when it's unfair, it's so, like, it's like what people think, like, Dark Souls is when it's unfair.
Troll throwing.
It's like spiteful. It's like...
Yeah.
It is the only content I've ever experienced across all of these titles that feels like it hates you. And I there's only so much that I can, like, the thing that's good about it, the thing that leads me to cut it some slack, is the fact that only in this one chalice dungeon, of all the different variants that are given to you offline or the online ones you can do, in this very deep pocket of the very optional content, does like distorted unfairness take place. So as a whole, I don't have too much to complain about, except for right here. And like, it's so distinct from the baseline experience, and my overall opinion of Bloodborne isn't diminished by the time I spent stuck on the defiled amygdala, but like, it makes me want to punch a hole in my desk, like, right the fuck now. And it's literally, it is all so I could get through this and fight a woman grieving her child, and just so I could get that 100% stamp on this game that no one will see.
Yeah.
Which sucks even more, because the dungeon it takes to actually reach the Queen Yharnam boss fight is like half as hard as the defiled dungeon. What is nice is that the Queen Yharnam fight is pretty excellent. It's legitimately actually I enjoy this one more than most of the whole game. It's actually worthy of taking place. They should have. I really think they should have put this one in the main content somewhere. I think it really suffers for missing this. She has the same boss theme as Ligarius. She attacks with similar blood magic to Ligarius, implying that the two have magic from the same tainted source. That the Cainhurst line, from which Ligarius stole that power, is descended from the Themarians, and Yharnam's royal lineage. She summons the cries of her lost baby to stun you and inflict devastating grab attacks. She wields a giant blood sword, and she shoots like magic spear attacks at you. She summons ghost versions of herself that trip you up and do even more damage if you can't take them out quickly enough. It was a fun fight. I really wanted to participate in it myself, but I did choose to summon this because I couldn't not summon Queen Killer for this. Look at this champion. Look at this fucking king over here.
That's that one picture of Adam Driver as Kylo Ren or something.
There are theories that this is just Alfred, who has just gone to the dungeons and lost his mind. He has the wheel and he has the cone. And he did
lost his shirt.
Yeah, he just
Tom Dungeon, I'm telling you.
Yeah, he picked up a cannon, and it's, you just going crazy. But
I think this
don't
is
know.
his retirement. I think for him this is like going to Boca.
I think it's a fun theory, but I think my actual honest opinion is this dude is a very playful reference to the online co-op community, because time and time again, the most deadly characters you see are not ones with huge armor and big poise, not the ones with like the fancy magics.
The shitless ones.
Yeah, they're a naked guy with a pot head and a giant sword.
Let me solo her.
Yeah, literally that dude. Yeah, also a queen killer. Yeah, it's fucking it's wonderful. The Queen Yharnam fight contains so many of Bloodborne's strengths as a whole artistic medium, all around. Knockout visual, character direction, and a sense of humor with the summon. In comparing her backwards to the Defiled Amygdala, it makes me hate that one even more, because all the creativity of this game shines here so much in comparison. And what frustrates many people is that after this fight, after the mechanical climax of all the hours you spent on the dungeons, you get an item that basically does nothing. You get this funny thing called the Yharnam Stone, this weird little red thing. It appears to be the queen's coagulated womb, the unborn fetus of the Great One that she carried still in there. And not only is her ghost laid to rest, the mystery of her dramatic presence is answered. She, too, once sought to carry an elder god into this world, was perhaps the very first person to try. Between the choir, the hunters, Bergenworth, Mensis, you've seen many people try to ascend, and find only corruption instead. Now you see where that lineage begins. I find that mighty compelling. Like, the actual like story content within the Chalice dungeons is truly worthy of being in the main game. It really sucks that they like. Part of me feels like they put it in the system just so that they could better justify people doing it. I think they should have left that content be truly optional. When we get to
So what does the clump do?
Oh, it does nothing.
You really mean
Absolutely
it does
nothing.
nothing?
Yeah, it does nothing.
It's just a little badge.
Yeah,
That's
it's just a
class
badge
of
that says
the-
you beat the dungeons. Yeah, you did
It's
it.
just a little merit badge to put on your sash.
You fight through like the most horrendous like optional content, and you get an item that does nothing.
I
Classic.
look at my inventory sometimes and behold it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Like, the thing is, once I got through this the dungeons, I did end up pretty over-leveled for the DLC, which is nice. But that reward in itself was not, like, mechanically very compelling to me.
The reward you got was the friends you made along the way.
Yay! What's funny is I beat Queen Yharnam, then got the then I got the true ending. Then I just went on and beat the game a second time in like 3 hours. I was like, I need to do a quick revenge tour. Yeah. One more boss awaits you after finding that last projection of Queen Yharnam. A baby. And
The baby.
it's so. Thanks for bringing up Virgo earlier, because I remembered. I remembered. Now, you don't fight the baby necessarily. You fight the wet nurse. It, like Odin, the formless rapist, is partially incorporeal. It has many arms and wings, but its hood covers some kind of invisible serpentine head. Its boss fight is pretty excellent. It moves like no other beast or elder god in the whole game, and its theme is just a creepy music box tune, the same one that you've heard repeatedly in Gascoigne's music box so long ago, and environmentally. It'll stretch its arms out like sides, leap at you, attacking a whirling flurry of slashes as it slowly and gracefully drifts through a thick haze. Ebritus represents the furthest extreme in alien boss design, but I find the wet nurse evocative of the kind of imaginative suggestion that's so critical to the kind of moods and style you expect from Lovecraft's work. Lovecraft had a lot of quirks in his writing, did a lot of purple prose, actively putting a lot of racist and sexist biases into explicit text, but sometimes he does create very strong images with indirect descriptions. I'm going to read a quote here from the towards the end of the story The Dunwich Horror to get this point across. Without warning came those deep, cracked, raucous vocal sounds which will never leave the memory of the stricken group who heard them. Not from any human throat were they born, for the organs of man can yield no such acoustic perversions. Rather, would one have said they came from the pit itself, had not their source been so unmistakably the altar stone on the peak. It is almost erroneous to call them sounds at all, since so much of their ghastly, infra-based timbre spoke to dim seats of consciousness and terror far subtler than the ear. Yet, one must do so, since their form was indisputably, though vaguely that, of half-articulate words. They were loud, loud as the rumblings of the thunder above which they echoed. Yet did they come from no visible being. And because imagination might suggest a conjectural source in the world of non-visible beings, the huddled crowd at the mountain's base huddled still closer and winced as if in expectation of a blow. From what black wells of acherontic fear or feeling, from what unplumbed gulfs of extra-cosmic consciousness or obscure long-latent heredity were those half-articulate thunder-croakings drawn? Presently they began to gather renewed force and coherence as they grew in stark, utter, ultimate frenzy. End quote. Now, the wet nurse isn't just a remarkable design because it visually captures the suggestions going on in this passage. It's not just the possibility of what the wet nurse may actually be that's so compelling. It's how utterly alien it is, even to the elder gods that we've seen so far. Ebritus, the amygdalas, the blue emissary guys, all beings of eyes and tentacles and many limbs. None have been so ghastly or gothic as whatever this creature is. Nor should the formless child it's protecting issue the cries of a human baby. Like, it is an infant great one that cries like a normal human baby.
It's so human, is the thing.
Yes, you can actually hear her cries throughout the main game if you have the insights. Something like 60.
I actually got up to that point after keeping my eyes on a guide of like events and things that get added at various insight points, and I hoarded a lot of insight. So for a while I was getting the crying of the child. And so it's always faint, and you know, if you stand still you'll hear it. It's on a loop. It's generally faint and has like the quality of being far away or a bit like resonant. The difference being that like it's very present when you're in the area that the kid is, like Mensis Nightmare. And then it becomes crystal clear. Like it loses the quality of it being distant once you get to that arena, which is so fucked up because I've been hearing it the whole time.
Yeah,
I don't want to interrupt too hard, but I think it's time for me to dip out.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay. I am like 3 hours ahead of y'all, so...
All right. Night, night.
That is fair. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll put some more shouty-outies there. Do you have any more, anything you want to plug on the way out, Lilith?
I mean, well, I gotta plug Bloodborne Cart.
Yes. Yes. Your baby.
Well,
thank you. Oh, thank you so much for being here. It really was delightful.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. I wish I could stay later, but...
No worries.
Schedule.
Yeah. So long.
Yeah.
Peace out. Bye,
Night,
everyone.
night.
And thanks again. Bye.
Good night, Lilith. We went to Bloodborne together.
All right. Well, that leaves us to cover the end of this game in the DLC. Let me go over here. Back to my shits. Okay. All right. So, killing this baby produces the message "Nightmare Slain," indicating that you have at last ended the repeating nights of the Hunter's Moon. There will still be werewolves abound, but at least things won't get any worse. You know, for Yarnum, at least. For you, the Hunter's Dream is still very much now on fire. And now, a climactic choice presents itself. So if Queen Yarnum was a climactic encounter of the subplot surrounding the church, the Old Blood, and the path to Ascension, Gurman's boss fight is a climax of your path as a hunter. The Old Hunter offers to behead you, severing your ties to the Hunter's Dream and awakening you, freeing you from your service. Of course, that would mean giving up on completing the game. What the fuck? So, this makes you too dangerous to live. So, he rises from his wheelchair, draws his scythe, and faces you. And he's got quite a good fight left in him. He hobbles and limps during his normal walk cycle, but he'll leap and lunge at you with deadly grace and practiced agility. It is in this garden of white flowers under the great tree, an image that appears in climactic moments from so many other stories in Japanese game and film history alike. He will
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Very funny that Metal Gear Solid 3 has come up twice tonight. He will use the Bloody Crow's Quickstep ability, one that you would have gained yourself, from the bone of an old hunter in a workshop long abandoned. Gehrman is a tragic figure, the inventor of trick weapons, creator of the workshop, founder of the very first Hunters of Beasts, now reduced to the sad FromSoft cliche of the crestfallen hero, a lonely old figure who sits alone and despondent in a quiet, lonely hub zone, delivering sarcastic dialogue to players desperately mashing the skip button. Very, very sad indeed. Killing Gehrman calls down the Red Moon's true avatar in the dream, a being called the Moon Presence, also known as Flora. The doll will sometimes pray to Flora, the being who brought the doll and the hunter's dream into being in the first place. Gehrman was a lonely man in his old age, and his desire to have new hunters, to have a companion and a home, was granted. The description for one of the cores you find reads that the Great Ones are sympathetic in spirit, and often answer when called upon. Now, Formless Odin twisted the intentions of Ariana and Yosefka, doing what he thought would be mutually best for both he and these women. Flora granted Gehrman's wish, but in a dark and twisted way that left him more shallow and empty than before. What I find so fascinating about the Great Ones being sympathetic is that they are sympathetic to humans in the way that a human is sympathetic to a dog. You know? We think we know what is best for these creatures that operate on a fundamentally different cognition and set of physical needs than we do. Like, to say that these things know what is good for humans, or what to find some kind of mutually beneficial relationship, those ideas are incompatible and will often come off as cruel. So even though the Great Ones are nice to humanity, they cause a lot of destruction, which I find very fascinating.
Now, normally you do not, under any circumstances, have to hand it to the old gods.
No,
but in defense of the Moon Presence, you did just curb stomp her elderly dog in front of her.
Yup. And now she wants a new dog. Someone else has to watch the Hunter's Dream.
Woof?
Yep.
Bark.
That's you. You're doing great so far. Now, being the embodiment of the ever-observant living moon, the Moon Presence has been watching your hunt this whole time with distant glee. She wants the hunt to continue. She wants the other Great Ones to die. And we don't really know why that is, but she absorbs you and binds you to the dream in Gehrman's place, and the cycle begins anew. Unless, of course, you've consumed 3 third chords. You resist the Moon Presence, you fight it, you transcend the hunt, you seek Pale Blood. She's a hell of a boss too, more animalistic and feral than any other Great One you've faced so far. She's fast, cunning, agile, aggressive, predatory, everything a beast of the Old Blood is, and so much that is grotesque and strange and beyond imagination. She calls down rains of blood, performs massive AoEs that reduce your health to 1, then stays still long enough for you to attack and rally your health back. The thrill of Bloodborne's combat is at its highest possible pitch, its most ecstatic frenzy of violence and brutality in this fight. The thrill of being a hunter is taking down the most dangerous of prey, and this is it. The end of your path of drinking the blood of gods, taking insight from Yharnam's secrets, and in strength and courage, killing this very last prey. It is such a climax of the cosmic horror in this game, so, appropriately, in killing the Moon Presence, you transcend not only the hunt, but your own mortal form. You ascend, although not in the way you bargained for. You're a new infant Great One, a delicate little slug cradled by the doll, waiting to grow into a new being and send mankind into a new age. Are you even yourself anymore? Is your will and consciousness still intact at all? Is this the strength that you asked for? As a conclusion to the arc of cosmic horror, it is very satisfying. Not for your hunter, though. For the hunter, it's an ironic comeuppance. It is making your bed and then lying in it forever. Alright, are you ready for some fucking DLC, you two?
I know these ones. I'm intimately familiar with these ones.
You saw me play some of this, didn't you? No.
Yes, that is why. I ain't touching that shit.
Yep. One of the absolute miracles of Bloodborne is that, as utterly complete as Bloodborne feels on its own, the Old Hunters DLC contains even more iconic and memorable images, bosses, and areas. Some of the very best of the entire FromSoft catalog, as far as I'm concerned. It takes the aesthetic frame of Bloodborne, slow cooks it on high, chews it up, and spits it out to create this weird blend with the Dark Souls thematic concern. Now, Yharnam is not a pre- or post-apocalypse like the worlds of Dark Souls are. It is a present apocalypse. It is steeped in gore and fire and violence. The Old Hunters takes those concepts and introduces decay to the creative palette. The thing that Bloodborne had to leave behind to establish its distinct identity. To create this, we enter a new nightmare realm, one on the same plane of reality as the Nightmare Frontier, the Swamp of Eldritch Beasts where the Amygdala dwells, and the Nightmare of Mensis. The Hunter's Dream is a place of quiet isolation, of melancholy rest for hunters both dead and living. Many hunters pass through the dream and allow themselves to wake, like Eileen and Jura once did. The Hunter's Nightmare, on the other hand, is the terminal endpoint of all hunters. Here, hunters are free to kill and maim with absolute power until they degrade into beasts themselves for the new hunters. It is an endless revel of cruelty and madness. The hunters here are drunk on depravity and brutality. The beasts are frightened and disempowered. It is a self-perpetuating purgatory for all who pass through it, a place where time and space and human spirit all rot and degrade at once. As such, the first environment is a piled-up mash of various neighborhoods and districts you know, connecting to each other in ways that defy the established geographical layout. A swamp of blood leads to the base of the Research Hall, a twisting labyrinth of spiral staircases and hallways that lead nowhere, a distortion of the kind of places of study where church and hunters alike enacted their cruel experiments. Finally, the Fishing Hamlet, an Innsmouth-like village that's the most logical layout of all, but holds the darkest secrets. Taken cumulatively, the Old Hunters DLC expands and elaborates what kind of people Gehrman used to know, what great atrocities they enacted on beasts, on great ones, and on human beings when the hunt was new. The whole place is their hell, their destiny, their curse. And now, all the content is optional, of course, but even within the DLC, there's a boss who's not required for progression at all. You know him, actually. He's a guy from the Willem cutscene so long ago. In the Grand Cathedral, in the Waking World, there is a beast skull, which belongs to Lawrence, the first vicar, the founder of the church. In the Nightmare, in the same spot, you find what's become of Lawrence, a burning version of the cleric beast. If you find Lawrence's human skull and return it to the beast, he wakes up to face you. His theme is a variation on the cleric beast theme, backed with a dramatic baritone choir and a pipe organ. Presentationally, the Lawrence fight is a triumph for the player character, fighting the very first boss on your journey, but stronger, more dangerous, more significant and dramatic in every possible way. The actual fight with the guy, though, kinda sucks. See, because he is on fire now, he now has these ground slams with fire blast AoEs, which make him even harder to dodge. And on the third phase, his legs break out from under him, causing him to bleed lava. It's damn near impossible to even get close to the guy. It's really hard to do damage. It's hard not to take damage. And being the optional boss of the highly scaled DLC, he's frequently cited as the most cheaply imbalanced boss in the whole game. Now that may be true, and if I didn't do the entire Chalice Dungeon section almost right before this, I probably would have had a harder time with the guy. I remember going into this, knowing about him by reputation, and being so intimidated, at a loss as how I was even supposed to do anything. Like, how do you not get hit? How do you do damage when you start using lava? And then I thought back to when I first played Bloodborne, tried it out at my friend's house. Back when I did that, I walked around Central Yharnam for a bit after dying a lot, and I found the Cleric Beast. And I figured pretty much right away that I didn't stand a chance. Instead of running away, I just joked. I pretty much gave up on the idea that I would even come out alive at all. And I just go, this guy ain't shit. So I start rolling recklessly at the giant deer werewolf ahead of me. I stopped taking the challenge seriously. I refused to be desperate. I refused to let him scare me. I dodged through him very nonchalantly. I attacked him where I could, with that contempt for my own safety that I didn't realize Bloodborne was actively rewarding. It was my mindset that let me beat the Cleric Beast on my very first time ever playing Bloodborne.
You fought like Luffy.
Yup. Is that
That's like Luffy.
Yes. Hey Dorothy, here to
Oh fuck, you're here now. The only person who would come in here and the first words out of their mouth would be, yeah, like
One
Luffy.
Piece. Here to help carry the last hour.
Yeah.
So it was mindset that let me beat the Cleric Beast on my very fucking first try playing this game. So I tuned my playstyle to ignore the apparent challenge of the Lawrence fight. I ate beast blood pellets to increase my own damage output, and I made myself more vulnerable. I drank lead elixirs to slow myself down, but I mitigated the hit stun from his lava phase. And I thought I'd be stuck on Lawrence for a week or more, like with Melania, or Ishin, or even the Defiled Amygdala. And I beat Lawrence in an evening. And as the choir rose, and as Lawrence fell, I felt almost perfectly in sync with Bloodborne's dramatic intentions, in a way that felt like it came completely from within. It was one of the most triumphant moments I've ever felt in this game. And it's not even the best boss of the game, or even just the DLC. Now, one of the most popular weapons in this game is Ludwig's Holy Blade, which is a sword that turns into an even bigger sword. The man, Ludwig, isn't much more than a lore proper noun, a legend in the base game itself. Ludwig fought with the Church's hunters. He was a hero, he was a symbol of hope for Yharnam in the early days of the Beast Plague, but then something terrible happened to him. He became corrupted and twisted and turned into one of the most wretched beasts you've ever seen in the game, as the clerics are wont to do.
Oh my god, that's the guy from TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
all those TikToks were like someone will like make like a light criticism of England, and it'll show that picture and be like, mathematics class.
Yep. That's the exact guy. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Now,
he's a celebrity.
The beast
LA's
blood is
crazy.
just becoming British.
Yup. So, that beast, the beast version of Ludwig, is a boss in the DLC. He's one of the most gibbering horrors in this whole game, as you've just heard my fellows demonstrate. I think he's probably one of the best, he's probably the best boss of this entire game. Probably one of the greatest boss designs of the entire From Software catalog. I don't say that lightly. Ludwig the Accursed waits you in the dregs of the Hunter's Nightmare, in an underground corpse pile where bodies simply writhe and plead for salvation, degraded beyond any recognition. He is many-limbed and twisted. His former face now got horse features on it. He is now the knight and his own steed. He has this big second mouth protruding from his shoulder, which is lined with eyeballs, showing that something once gave him eyes on the inside as well. That mouth also happens to spew a fount of white fluid, which I'm gonna be mature and say maybe that's just related to pale blood or something. You know, maybe it's not the thing that you think it is.
You shoot and go.
He is an aesthetic, dramatic, and mechanical blend of 3 different threads of this game's story: beasts, great ones, and hunters all at once. He's a real bastard to fight too. He's even more savage and unpredictable than the Moon Presence was, and most of his moves are just violent thrashing and stomps. He isn't like hungry like the Bloodstarved beast, or domineering like Vicar Amelia. He just isn't. his animating consciousness has been reduced to its most base impulses. All he knows is just violence and agony. And whether it's directed at you or not, he doesn't even seem to notice or care. Until things get incredible about halfway through the fight. Now, if you played Dark Souls 1, or Dark Souls 2, or even the earlier Demon Souls or Kingsfield, you would have recognized a weapon called the Moonlight Greatsword. Typically, it is a big sword that glows blue and shoots magical beams, and there are many theories about its repetition through games as a signifier of lore connectivity. I personally kind of hate theories like this, so to me, instead, the Moonlight Greatsword represents the creative sequence between these games. Its inclusion is like Miyazaki's signature on this game, much like Shinji Mikami's rocket launcher boss fight, right?
Yeah, very much the same.
Now, the sword hasn't appeared all game until right here, in the DLC, while fighting Ludwig. The sword, still embedded in Ludwig's back, glows a light and reawakens the last fragments of Ludwig's consciousness. He stands on his hind legs and faces you, sword in hand, like a dueling partner. My true mentor, my guiding moonlight, he calls it. And this weird magic sword he found deep below the city, glowing a light with alien consciousness, drove Ludwig to madness and beasthood. And now it brings him back. The music changes very dramatically between phases. Not only do the instruments change here, but so does the time signature. It goes from common time to 3/4. It's a waltz now. You're now dancing with Ludwig, with Bloodborne as an artistic medium, and with Hidetaka.
How romantic.
Yeah, with Hidetaka Miyazaki as an artist. It is fucking hands down one of the finest bosses in the entire library of games. Dramatic, terrifying, intense, deeply tragic. When you beat Ludwig, all that remains is a talking head, lamenting his path to depravity and making one final request. He asks you about the church hunters. Are they still the valiant Spartans that I once knew? You have the option to tell him the truth. You can tell him that they've all gone mad or have been killed. You can tell him that his life's work was for nothing, or lie to him as one final dying comfort.
Remind me what you picked?
I think I did lie to him. I told him, yeah, no, they're doing great. You did wonderful. Your work and legacy lives on. It's yeah. The entire Ludwig boss fight is just a perfect distillation of everything that's great about Bloodborne as an artistic work. Like, the mood, the fight is just so fucking good. And it's wild that the next two bosses we're about to talk about are very, very damn close to Ludwig in terms of design, intention, and execution. Each of them are contenders for the best bosses in Bloodborne, one of whom may be the game's single most iconic character, despite only showing up in this DLC. Kind of. She's actually a very familiar presence by now. A woman who shares the same face and voice with the doll. Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower has a deep and rich history touching on the origins of the Cainhurst royal line, the experiment to create Rom, and the Hunter's Dream itself. She was the caretaker to all the neglected failed experiments to create a new living god, one the Hunters could control. They were neglected, tortured, their minds becoming addled, and their heads enlarging to fill bulbous, bloody sacks. These are the enemies of the research hall area. She was German's apprentice, and because of his unrequited desire for her, the doll now looks just like her. The doll, however, possesses none of her same ruthlessness, her cunning, her deadly grace that she displays in her fight, which is why German is so disappointed and frustrated by the doll. Now, something that you gotta understand about German, one of the final bosses of the main game, is that despite, not only is he just incredibly lonely, he canonically gets zero pussy. I didn't mention this earlier, but he has stacks of books in the Hunter's Dream workshop that are titled "How to Pick Up Fair Maidens." Yeah,
Pages are kind of stuck together.
yeah, no, it's
Maidenless.
kind of a very huge L for that guy. So
Now, before we talk about Maria further, we do have to point out that you skimmed over the guys watching the spoon spark in the microwave.
the living failures. Yeah.
I died so many times in that fight, but I wasn't even mad because of how funny they are.
They're pretty goofy. I didn't cover them because I kind of skipped over a lot of like the horde mechanic bosses in this game. But yeah, the living failures do have one of the funniest like presentations of all of them. Their name is really funny also. Me and the gang. Seats Rainbow says the living failure, so easily forgotten.
Can't do that.
So she is not degraded in the hunter's nightmare. She has been lying in wait with intention and purpose, waiting to guard the hunter's darkest secret. So she faces you and kills you over and over and over and over and over again. Now, some people will get like very hard stuck on Ludwig. I beat him at like level 70 or so. But if you over leveled for Ludwig, you end up over prepared for Lady Maria. Now, I was not. I was underprepared. So I got to be killed by her repeatedly in all of the beautiful ways that she gets to do it. She has this double-ended sword called the Rakio. And she's so swift and graceful with that weapon, even in the first phase of the fight. The second and third ratchet up the difficulty incrementally. She adds her own blood to the sword as a magical enchantment, and then starts shooting it at you, and then lighting it on fire in the third phase. And what's fucking crazy is that you do get a Rakio later, and it has none of the same powers here.
She
Lady
just
Maria,
did that with her
yeah,
mind.
she can just do that. The music is fucking incredible here, too, by the way. It embellishes itself on the same theme, ratcheting up with each phase of the fight. It keeps a common time triplet rhythm that maintains the kind of back and forth dancing partner feel that you had with Ludwig. More than Gascoigne, Gehrman, or any of the Hunter NPCs, this is a real back and forth duel, especially when you have Arcane or Blood Tinge in your build. So you match her strength for strength, speed for speed, power for power. I gun parried her a lot, which was extremely dangerous, but very satisfying to pull off in repetition. She stands out to me as being one of the singularly most fun bosses in the entire game. Like, I really just looked forward to every single fight with Lady Maria, because it was just going to be a good time the whole all the way through. A less good time is right here at the very end. It's here that Bloodborne reaffirms its credentials as a true revision of the Lovecraftian style. One of Lovecraft's most famous stories, and most infamously racist in tone and content, is The Shadow over Innsmouth. The protagonist of that story finds a village where the populace have all turned into horrifying fish people, and the shocking twist is that their transformation was brought about by intermixing with local fish god creatures. So, mutation by racial mixing. Yeah, that's literally the story. The fish people.
Oh, right. I forgot that's what the racist angle was on that one.
Yep.
I was like, who is he racist against in that one? I was like, oh, it's just anti-miscegenation. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, the fish people are dehumanized throughout that story, especially after the twist, in a way that runs counter to Jura's adamant refusal to dehumanize the beasts of Old Yharnam. Bloodborne's final area is a nameless fishing hamlet filled with similar fish people, with a similar origin story, but the player is immediately invited to extend sympathy to the creatures, to view the sorry state of the village as a tragedy. There is a fishman at the very beginning who curses the murderers of the Bergenworth school, the guys who were the old hunters. So, you immediately wonder what the hunters did to these people. See, the Nightmare Village is just a mirror of a real one, where the old hunters found the fish people and found that they contained many eyes on the inside. So, they were killed. All of them harvested for the insight within, including the elder god they communed with. Mother Koss and her corpse still waits at the end of the village, including her unborn child, reanimated in the nightmare, cursing the hunters with this nightmare. He is, this entire hunter's nightmare only exists because he cursed the hunters out of vengeance for killing his mom and all of his friends. He's an incredible fight. He's one of the hardest in the whole game. He's this withered out skeleton figure. That big lump of flesh that he's holding as a weapon is his mother's placenta. He uses a bunch of lightning magic and ferocious moves in his second phase. Wild, angry, vengeful. He weeps in his boss intro as he crawls out of the carcass of his mother, but he screams so feral and animalistic when he attacks you. I struggled on the fight, definitely, but I found that my very aggressive, up-close, high attack speed build avoided a lot of his mid-range sweeps. I was able to backstab and gun parry him pretty consistently. Every fight was exciting, but they did stack up over time, and the fatigue of fighting the same boss repeatedly does wear you down. I did have the Chalice Dungeons to go back to. I could go fight Lawrence instead, so I was very blessed to have other things to do in order to just break up the monotony a little bit. What was very pleasant about this is it's one of the most cryptic and eerie moments of the entire story. Who even was Koss? I mean, who is this kid's father? And without clarifying lore details you gain after the fight, all you get is just a quiet sense of tragedy, of vengeful melancholy. Whatever happens here, he blames you. And when you do kill him, his ghost untethers itself from Koss and floats out to sea, and the watchful glow of the Astral Clock Tower fades away, showing a distant sunrise from beyond the sea. The curse is over. This nightmare too has been slain. It's not quite as strong a boss fight as Ludwig, but it's even more holistically satisfying than some of the main endings. Now, Bloodborne is... Yeah.
I will say, killing like a newly born orphan is bad enough thematically, and that makes you feel bad enough. But I will say this boss fight drove me to worse lengths than I thought any video game could drive me to, and that is I was forced to go on Reddit.com and summon a Redditor with a higher soul level than me to help me distract
You have
friends so that I could beat him, and it's humiliating. I could not beat the orphan. I was like ready to scream and cry. I had to get a Redditor. I had to put aside all of my...
I am so sorry that you had to go to Reddit.com.
I was gonna say
The depths of depravity.
the depths I had to sink to.
Those most condemned members of our community.
I hope I've articulated how much I think summoning people is okay for this game.
Yeah, but a Redditor?
God forbid.
People.
I mean, look, when you summon people, sometimes you get the champ, you know?
So you do sometimes get the champ, and you can't beat the champ. Now,
You can't beat the champ.
Bloodborne is so impressive to me, because for such an experimental title from such an experimental type of studio, it's still one of the most consistent and cohesive designs I have ever seen. Very little exists in a vacuum or stands out as being superfluous or a non sequitur. There are a couple of gaps in the armor, though. There are the moments where the design tends to sway and distort, and especially on the New Game Plus. I beat my second playthrough in only 3 hours, and my big hurdle in that playthrough was Mikolash, one of the bosses of the Nightmare of Mensis section. Presentationally, his fight is kind of a knockout. He's got an iconic design, a high-class voice performance, a really dramatic theme, a distinct and intricately designed arena. Narratively, he's the closest this game has to a singular antagonist, being the leader of the ritual that calls down the moon presence and perpetuates the beast curse. Mechanically, his fight is the worst. In fact, I think I'd say he's the worst to fight in the entire game.
Can you
So-
tell me about that in
You-
excruciating detail?
So, yes, I would love to. You chase him around foggy hallways while little puppet guys swipe at you. You have to corral him into a room where you have a short fight, then chase him again, then a much larger set of hallways, stairs, and teleporting mirrors, then fight him once more, where he has even more magic that has a chance to just one-hit kill you. Now, on New Game Plus, I beat a bunch of bosses on my little revenge tour on my very first try. But this dude slowed me down by like 30 whole minutes in that 3-hour run because I was not at all ready for how much he was going to scale. It took the wind out of my sails completely, and I only managed to beat him through desperately trying to DPS race him and putting pretty much everything I had on maximizing my Beast Blood pellet damage and just stun locking the fuck out of this guy.
Yeah, that's all he is. Hit him.
Yeah.
Fall beyond these nuts, G.
I fucking like on the first. God, that feels mean. Fighting him the first time didn't feel so bad. In fact, fighting it was kind of funny because he's just running around moaning the entire time, and it's kind of goofy. But it really starts to stack up after repeated attempts on him in the New Game Plus. So I was very grateful that I came around on another new game with Blood Tinge and just wiped him. It was very, very easy.
I think my biggest issue with the guy is that not unlike I think I showed up over leveled to a couple different fights in this game, and I have to decide whether or not I want to come back more appropriately scaled if that's possible for how I play. But then the other thing is, it's like, I do feel bad. It's like, he has a lot that he says. He starts yapping halfway through his running again, and I just accidentally pressed X through all of it. I didn't realize what was happening until I was like, whoa, this is words. This is lovingly acted. God fucking damn it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh God, no. I can only imagine if I had to do that any more than once, I would begin to tire of his bullshit. I have an awful sense of direction in Bloodborne. And his whole scenario wasn't charitable towards that. No,
it was not. One of the things that's very impressive about this game's presentation that I forgot to mention earlier, I really enjoy how Sekiro, for instance, defaults to Japanese language voices with subtitles. But what's impressive about this game is that it was actually dubbed in English before the lines were recorded in Japanese. So everything about the Mikolash presentation in the dub was a more faithful to the artistic vision going on here. And that's kind of why a lot of the English voice work in Bloodborne goes so hard. Now, another boss with excellent presentation but wonky mechanical balance was the One Reborn. He's this giant mass of twisty flesh and corpses, reanimated as a single hive being. He is massive, he's spectacularly gross, but he's another gimmick fight. You just kill the 6 bell ladies empowering him, then he'll stun long enough for you to hack through about half of his health bar. He stuns very easily if you target the extremities, which opens him up to long stun periods where you can either visceral him or just do more damage. So, I never once died to this awesome, yucky, big meat boss out of 3 playthroughs, which really kind of took the drama out of it for me. It's like, it's a way that was opposite to how Mikolash took the drama out, you know? Imbalance in the player's favor and detriment alike can equally disrupt the experience. It is a careful and considered affair that Sekiro would spend a lot of effort trying to streamline. Sekiro and Elden Ring alike would also do away with the durability system, where continued use of a weapon causes them to break, making you go back to the Hunter's Dream to spend a small amount of souls to repair them. It's superfluous, janky, it breaks the rhythm of the game loop, especially when you have so many fewer weapons to choose from than usual. The busy work it adds can even disrupt the Blood Vial grind, which if you play online and have beaten the Blood-starved beast, you can pretty much bypass. See, a chalice dungeon generated by the seed CUMMMFPK will spawn in an extremely powerful enemy at the beginning, right outside the bounds of the dungeon, granting you a massive amount of souls every time you spawn and reload the dungeon. Known as the Cum Dungeon by fans. Submit! It completely trivializes the grinding loop and thins out the compounding consequences of death in the game, and speeds up the leveling significantly. It is wildly imbalanced. Like the other instances of imbalance, though, including the Chalice Amygdala, it only occurs on the very outer margins of this very imaginative, very experimental game. And the experiments and variations on Dark Souls would go on to work in FromSoft's favor in many ways in the future. Just as Dark Souls 1 and 2 inform much of the design and thematic focus of this game, Bloodborne's combat rhythm, aesthetic motifs, and lore concerns would inform the subsequent From Software titles and beyond. Dark Souls 3 borrows the speed of combat, but also many aesthetic ideas, like the Nightmare Frontier's distortion of the familiar as echoed by the Dreg Heap, where it crashes all of these familiar objects and ideas together into one weird, chaotic dream mess. Sekiro uses this boss from the Chalice Dungeons, the Bloodletting Beast, as a prototype for the infamous Guardian Ape boss, a massive feral beast corrupted by a parasitic worm, and also adapts the Quicksilver Bullet system into spirit emblems.
Excuse me for dropping.
Not now.
Alright.
Not now, Winston.
Winston, not now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the Quicksilver Bullet system shows up as spirit emblems in Sekiro as well, which powers the prosthetic tools. Elden Ring will blend many familiar aspects of Dark Souls with the Bloodborne concern with the cosmos, the cosmic cycle of Elden Ring's world, dictated by unseen powerful entities from beyond the stars. It also adapts a lot of the moods and moves of the Lady Maria fight into the secret, iconic Malenia boss fight. She has actually a lot of very similar moves to Lady Maria. She's just a little more mechanically distorted than Lady Maria. Bloodborne's risks and successes taught FromSoft many lessons, and even passed some more onto other studios. Many Souls imitators have been released over the years, and most recently the NeoWiz title, Lies of P, released this year. Its acclaim and financial success has been moderate so far, compared to Bloodborne's or Elden Ring's by comparison, but it demonstrates that even 8 years later, the demand for this kind of game, as strange and as niche as it is stronger than ever. Bloodborne was so unique and so special, with such an immutable sense of identity, so distinct from what came before, that when Dark Souls 3 simply recycled the basic setup of Dark Souls 1, it was a disappointment that FromSoft seemed to give up on doing so again. Even though Sekiro would experiment with a wholly distinct creative palette from literally any other modern FromSoft title, satisfying the craving that Bloodborne left, Sekiro was alienating to both Souls fans and new players in many ways. Now, I personally think Sekiro is the better game than Bloodborne as a whole. It is much more consistent, more narratively focused, and personally, emotionally moving than Bloodborne was. But nothing can deny what Bloodborne means to people, what it represents as a creative next step for the studio, why it's been treasured for almost 10 years now. It is very hard to let go of Bloodborne, which happens to be exactly the best way to end things in Bloodborne. Suppose you've taken Jura and Eileen's tales to heart, observed the collapse of the schools of Bergenworth, of the Church of Mensis. Ambition is folly. The hunt is a curse, and ascension will simply cause more destruction. Steeping yourself in the hunt is not good for you, for the people around you. Look at what happened to Gascoigne. After 3 playthroughs in the Chalice Dungeons, I ended this way here. I accepted Gehrman's offer. My character knelt below the moon, let Gehrman's scythe come down and decapitate her. She awoke somewhere else, living beyond the dream, back in Yharnam, in the waking world. It is not a heroic ending. The city is still very much in ruins, and the beasts are definitely still out there. But the hunter is free. They're saved from eternity in Gehrman's place in the dream, from imprisonment in an alien god form. of the curse of the hunter's nightmare. They are allowed to just let go and walk away. It kind of seems like the boring default ending at first. You get to skip 2 entire boss fights to get this. And why give me all these eldritch secrets to turn over and all these bosses to fight and then have me not see them through to the end? And I think it's because that true ending only has weight in contrast to this one. And the inverse is very much true. You resisted the power of gods, of the sadistic call of the old blood. You did not shed your humanity. You made the harder choice. Now, I still don't own a PS4, and Bloodborne still isn't on the PC, and I highly doubt that a much anticipated sequel will ever be released. But I should be happy with the memories that this game has given me. I carry them with me whenever I enjoy other art, when I tell my own stories, and when I make projects like these. I found inspiration and joy in Bloodborne time and time again. And now that I'm done, I suppose, like the doll says, all that's left is to find my worth in the waking world. And that's Bloodborne, everybody.
Yay!
Yeah.
Woo!
So, that was, man. So, any closing thoughts between Austin and Spitzy? I guess, Dorothy, you only just got here, but,
I have a thought.
yeah. Okay, cool.
I'm proud of you for it.
Anyway.
Honestly, I mean, as someone who is in the process of beating this game, so I mentioned before, like I'm beating this game right now. Like 24 hours ago, I reached pick your ending for the first time, and I waffled in Sebastian's DMs for a while as to which of the 3 endings I wanted, and it was a really extreme split between saying yes to Gurman, getting scythed, waking up, versus going whole hog and becoming slug baby at the end so I could get a hug from my doll friend. Because those really are the only 2 paths that matter to me as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that was a driving force between me considering the Gurman ending, it's not, or the yes to Gurman ending, getting beheaded, wasn't just because it meant I would have to play less of this game, though that was tempting. It's because I had a lot of... It was specifically because I was drawn to the aesthetics of it and the peace that this old man would look upon you and grant you after you've gone and just rooted around, really skittered through the horrors. Looking to someone more senior than me and saying, I'm so tired, man. Handing him your 2 weeks. I think there's beauty there, and that's part of the reason that I seriously considered that ending. To look at something and say, I am done with this, and I'm going to ask you to let me out, please and thank you. And also because I knew how visually beautiful that was.
Yeah. How about you, Austin?
Yeah, no, I don't have any like very poetic thoughts on the game necessarily. I just I'd like to go back and enjoy it again, not rushing through it because I made the mistake of promising myself that I would beat it before I played Elden Ring.
Yeah.
I think I'd really like to take it in a bit more, which I did enjoy it on my initial playthrough, but it was so like anxiety inducing that like I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, dude.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I want you and me to talk forever about how bad it feels to be in Bloodborne.
It's so scary to be in Yharnam. There's ghouls and goblins all
I do
around.
have a thought. I do have a thought. I like the crows. I think they're funny.
Boom! Yeah, you pussy!
So that's gonna put an end to things. We're gonna keep talking a little bit about this because it's giving me power. I do want to give one more quick thank you to Lilith for being here earlier. That was truly lovely. I'm going to give Austin and Spitzy. You guys got anything you want to plug?
Sure, I'll go first. Um, so obviously my Twitch channel is in the title, Gorilla Radio Show, but also it's a podcast, and we're doing a thing where if we get
Whoa.
like it's a podcast about primates. It's real fun,
Yes.
but we're doing a thing like a stretch goal thing where if we get like we're almost at the initial goal, but if we get like a couple more patrons, we're going to start pledging 10% of our proceeds to primate conservation, which may get
Oh yeah.
be a larger amount in the future. It really depends. It's just we're kind of all extremely poor right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but it's something, we want to, if you guys are into primate conservation, that's what we talk about. So
It's a good
check us out.
cause. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
have links to all those things, I suggest you put them in the stream live blogging in our Discord server so that these folks can go find those immediately.
Oh yeah.
And how about you, Spitzy?
Hi, I am a Twitch user, and that I also stream about it. I run a little show of my own. You may have noticed that my URL has Speaks JP in the title. It's because I do speak Japanese, so I spend my time on this website going through classic games, beloved and obscure, and playing through them entirely in Japanese and translating in real time. If I don't know something, we look it up together, or someone in chat might help me out with it. We've played things like Kingdom Hearts back when it was really hard to get those games in their with Japanese voices in them, and other stuff like that. And I will be back from being gone from streaming for a while. Not tomorrow, but next Saturday. Double feature, 8 hours worth of stream, where I'll be playing the sequel to Earthbound, known as Mother 3, finishing it entirely in Japanese, along with Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, the GameCube version. That's in English.
Dang.
That's a treat.
Awesome. So yeah, everybody go mark your calendars and check that shit out. As for me, I'm here on this channel sometimes. Every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday around 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'm gonna be coming back to this channel a little later, probably sometime next month. I'm gonna take a little vacation, but you can find me. You can find me then playing every single Metal Gear Solid title. I'm very, very excited to do this. Huge Metal Gear fan. I do these complete history streams about once a month, every 4 to 6 weeks or so. The next one looks like it'll be around like late November, early December. I've yet to announce what I'm planning. I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Twitter, and all that good stuff. I have a Discord server. It's linked in Nightbot repeatedly. I'm also over on Dorothy's channel every weekend. We play Persona 5. And yeah, so everybody go check those things out. I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody watching the YouTube video, but I'm gonna stick around with everyone in chat to talk a little bit more. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, once again. So long.